You're listening to Symposium, a year-round conference in the arts, brought to you by Pipeline Artists.
Oh, I don't want to waste a second on this one because I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions. So thank you all for attending this Symposium Town Hall panel. I think this is our 9th Town Hall. I'm going to fact check that after. Since we launched a year ago, and this is the first to hit the max number of attendees. So about 500 are here to listen to John Zalzerny from Bellevue and Halle Mariner from APA. I don't know Halle personally, but I hear she's wonderful from her clients. And John, I do know personally, and it's actually really good. High compliment from me, John. I will say to cover yours, John, I'm giving you a compliment. Probably one of the most straightforward and sharpest industry people I know. So feel free, ask any questions you have for them tonight. Don't be shy. And so, yeah, thank you both for being here, as well as my co-moderator for the evening, Ruth Sabin, who is one of Pipeline's longtime execs, a writer herself, a frequent moderator of town halls. And yeah, we have a ton of people here, and we expect a lot of questions. So we'll also have Jeannie Bowerman, our other exec, waiting in the wings as a backup moderator, just to field some of the inquiries. One quick note, I think Ruth will remind everyone later too, and Jeannie will remind everyone later. If you have a question, don't put it in the chat field. Go ahead and put it in that Q&A box. If it's in the chat, we'll probably miss it. So
might miss it.
Yeah. So Ruth, I'll kick it over to you if you want to give us the quick bios on John and Halle.
Yeah, I would love to. So hailing from the Midwest, Halle Mariner graduated from Columbia College Chicago in film business before moving out to LA. Previously, she worked in film sales for Shoreline Entertainment and Preferred Content. Currently, Halle works at APA as an agent in the scripted literary department. And as an honoree of Color Associates 2019 Next Up List, Halle has been on boards for Women's Wednesday, BIPOC Mentorship Program Committee, and Start With 8 mentorship programs. So Halle's obviously in the realm of mentorship, which is wonderful. So thank you for being here tonight. And APA, for those who are unaware of it, is a midsize full-service agency repping clients from talent, music, literary, across TV, film, and books, branding, comedy, touring, and more. Representing big clients like Gary Oldman, Melissa Leo, 50 Cent, and many, many more. And our other panelists tonight, John Zalzerny oversees the feature film production and literary management team for Bellevue Productions. His clients' writing and directing credits include things like Infinite, Parallel, Eli, Bad Match, Better Watch Out, Heavy Trip. It's a really long list of accolades out there, and we're also very happy to have him. His clients have had 26 scripts on the last 7 Blacklists, the annual list of the best unproduced feature scripts, which includes Blonde Ambition, the #1 script on the 2016 Blacklist, Headhunter, the #1 script on the 2020 Blacklist, and of course, our most recent Cauliflower, the #1 script on the 2021 Blacklist that Pipeline gets to boast having discovered actually last year. So, and his clients have written all kinds of TV shows, such as FBI International, Mr. Robot, Training Day, Tiny Pretty Things, Hand of God, among many others. And he was also an executive producer on the feature film Always Watching and Parallel, and produced Eli, which was released by Netflix. He most recently produced Infinite, which I actually personally enjoyed, directed by Antoine Fuqua and starring Mark Wahlberg. Is it Chiwetel Ejiofor? Is that how you say it? And Dylan O'Brien, which was released by Paramount Plus.
All right.
Chiwetel.
I'm gonna
get that down.
When we do the recording, we'll edit a correction over that. Okay, cool. Thank you. So real quick, how the format's going to work tonight. We're going to spend the first hour as kind of a general Q&A, some broad stroke pieces of advice. Ruth and I have kind of a short list of what I think are frequently asked questions to kick things off. And the hour mark, we'll take like a 5-minute break. And then the second hour is more attendee questions, or all attendee questions. And then anything that John and Halle would like to add towards the end there. And that'll be that. So To kick it off, and I have my first question. It's kind of a quick backstory question for each of you, just to get that out of the way. But I think it might be illuminating for the attendees. So, in brief, why did you both make the decision to become an agent and a manager, respectively? Like, what was it that drew you more to discovering new writers than becoming a writer yourself, or something in that respect? And we can start with Haley.
I mean, I am not a writer whatsoever. I was terrible at it. My sister is actually a writer, so she's very creative. I think so. I'm more of a math than science type of person. I was great at math. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely one reason why. But I think what led me to becoming an agent, I mean, obviously, John actually had a lot to do with that as well. I think so from our first lunch that we had together when I was still an assistant. But I think so what gravitated me towards representation, specifically the agency, I think the ability to be able to connect people to each other. I think so that's what I just really love to do, is just figuring out, it's like a very much of puzzle pieces of like, okay, you have this project. Okay, this person's looking for this thing. And I think I love seeing that come together because it's a very fun, strategic way to handle things. But also I think when you see the hard work your client has put into something for so long, and like, it's a grind. This, like, being a writer is no joke. Like, I have the utmost respect for it. It's tough field to be in. But when they put in all this work and then finally the success of all their hard work starts paying off, it was like, and then when I was an assistant seeing that for clients, it was just really like reassuring. You're just like, this is the part that feels good and that you want to keep kind of doing. It's kind of like you get this little high and you're like, okay, let's get to the next deal. Let's do the next project. Which one, what are you going to make right? What are you going to do this? Because you're just like,
sure,
all the things are going. So
that adrenaline rush of discovery,
yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say that's kind of the thing that I think so locked me into staying as an agent for sure as well.
Great. John?
Yeah, I mean, everything Haley said, is very resonant for me. I mean, I did try to be a writer for a number of years. And then, worked on a TV show as a writer's assistant. And then I moved into producing. The glib answer for why I'm rep is that, like, I tried to do everything else and I didn't make any money or enough money doing it. But I think all those kind of different avenues, writer, working in a production company, working on a TV show, working for a screenwriter, working as a producer, all led to kind of where I am and kind of the skill set I have. Just really, I think, finding my personal niche in terms of, I think I'm good at spotting talented people early in their careers, and good at kind of nurturing those voices and supporting those voices. That's really the thing. And I think both Haley and I really like finding people early in their careers. I'm sure as we move on to our careers that we will work more and more with people who are more established. But there is a real joy to finding people early in their careers and being one of the first voices that advocates for them, and says, because for so long people are often like, I'm a writer. And everyone around them is like, sure, show me the money, I'm sure there are people who are supportive, but, I think sometimes you can feel like you're speaking it into existence. And so I think it's nice when we come on board and we're like, yes, we agree. And then it's about gathering more resources, gathering more people, bringing, adding to the team and then getting you out there into the world. So that's always, really, really fun. And one of the things I enjoy the most.
Awesome.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I actually had a question kind of following up on that based on what you two, described as your jobs, essentially. Like, Haley, you used the word connection, that's what excited you, that modem of like discovery. And John, you used the word nurturing. And both of you guys, I mean, you have different, job descriptions, one being an agent, one being a manager. And so for those in the audience, I mean, can you describe the primary differences between those two roles? I feel like people always get agent manager kind of mixed up in the TV film realms. How do those jobs overlap? Where do they not overlap? And could you just like read into that a little bit for us?
I would say, John, I was going to have you answer just because you've done it the longest. And I feel like the roles of manager and agent have changed so much, even in the past like couple of years, I feel like, but maybe you'll be able to explain it more.
Well, the interesting answer is like, I would say, you're speaking in generalities a little bit, but as on a general rule, the difference is that Managers tend to be a little bit more almost like Jerry Maguire or something, smaller client list, more personal attention. And generally, more often than not, it goes, you find a manager first and then the manager helps you find an agent. But there are lots of exceptions to that. I know there are people that Haley has signed and then gone and found managers, or maybe they don't even have a manager, or they don't need a manager. And so, there are people like Haley, and some of her colleagues who are very hands-on and very, determined. And then but I would think kind of the more general rule is managers tend to be more hands-on. They tend to get in earlier. They tend to be more involved in development, in kind of, the day-to-day business of working with a client. And the agents are the people who come in and are a bit kind of bigger picture strategy. They're out there connecting people. They're taking even more meetings. They're meeting even more people. And they're saying, hey, this writer, they would work great with this producer or this director or this piece of talent. And the reality is there's a fair amount of overlap. It's just where do we, for a TV client, I do take people out for staffing and I put people up for jobs and things like that. But an agent will do that even more. So it's almost like the job description is actually quite similar. It's just a matter of what the percentages are. My day job might be 50% development, and for Haley that might, or an agent, for Haley it might be the same percentage, or maybe for another agent it might be 10% development. There's still an aspect of development to it, but it's just not as much of a thing. But if you're on a general rule, managers are the day-to-day people, and agents are the people who come in when there is a specific, something to sell or an opportunity to create. So that's kind of the overall thing. But like I mentioned, it really varies some managers are more like agents and some agents are more like managers. So it varies on a person-to-person basis.
Yeah. I mean, John, you said actually, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, John, you actually made a great point in terms of the percentage of because I think that's the biggest way to do it, because as you said, there's managers who are very agenty and there's agents who are very just manager. I'll do development with my clients maybe 40% of the time, maybe 30% of the time. Just because my list will tend to be bigger than a manager's list. I still try to keep my list pretty small, but it will tend to be bigger than the average manager. And I think the only other thing to add that's different, I guess the biggest difference between manager and agent is that managers are able to produce. They're able to produce clients' projects that they're passionate about and jump on board that way. While myself, I'm not able to be a producer on a project. I'll help probably put a project together alongside, maybe John is hey, we have this client, we're all excited, we're putting it together, but John can actually go on set and produce, which I'm totally fine with because I don't like doing it.
Yeah, that is a big key difference between for me. I honestly am not super focused on producing, even though I have produced a fair amount. My kind of standing joke is there are managers who occasionally produce and producers who occasionally manage. Which Haley will know.
That's actually really great. I like that.
Very true. Certain
so
people.
True.
I can echo that.
And so that is a big key difference. I sometimes think it's a little overblown in terms of the amount that it actually does occur. But it is something that does occur, particularly in the feature film space. In the TV space, it's a little more limited, I would say, although there are companies like 3 Arts that are massive in the TV space. So that is definitely a key difference because agents are licensed by the state and therefore cannot produce.
That's a good segue into another question that someone had posed. If you get signed by let's say a bigger management company, not even a bigger management company, but a management company with a lot more the higher profile clients than you coming in as this newbie, what's the best thing you can do to kind of move your way up the totem pole after you're signed?
To move your way up the totem pole,
meaning what's the best way you can do? What's the best thing you can do to help your new reps? Is it writing another spec? Is it constantly developing more stuff? Is it
not to feel like you're being lost in the shuffle?
Yeah.
Is that what you're kind of asking?
Sorry, Haley, ask me again.
Oh, not to be lost in the shuffle.
Not to be lost in the shuffle, right?
Make people money.
Yeah, I was make people money, but obviously I think so into that too, which now I'm realizing it's getting dark in here, so I'll probably turn the light in a second. But I think so. It's just you have to keep creating. You have yourself, especially when you come into it. I think so. Again, John and I as reps, we commission 10%. So we have 10% investment into your career, but that 90% is also going to be up to you. It's Are you networking? Are you creating new content? Are you bringing stuff for us to be able to do? And I think so if you're signing out a big place like that and you're like, great, I'm at this big place, and you just sit there, that's not how the job works. It's like, we need to see that you're also putting effort into it, whether, again, you're generating some new ideas, you're figuring out what to do as we're taking things out, because again, the market can flux so quickly where maybe you have one piece of material, you're like, great, let's roll out with this. But we also kind of expect or hope that you would have 3 or 4 ideas in your back pocket. Totally. And if not even that, like hopefully at least another script that you're able to share with folks. Cause I think so that follow-up is so important. But
yeah, it was kind of a leading question because I know a lot of writers who get signed, they're like, well, my work's done here. And they just sit back and wait for their managers just to like take out everything they've written.
It's the same as true of an agency, I would say personally, even more so. If you're like, I'm at CAA, I'm at WME. I've always said it's not as much about the agency, it's about the actual agent. There are great agents at those big places. There are not so great people at those places. And there are also certain incentives built into the culture, in that way. But the simplest answer is, and if you're producing quality work that people feel like, your reps feel like they can get into the town and get your name out there and they can really make some money from, and that might be like, A, I think I can sell this, or B, I think I can get this out to a wide swath of people that will lead to paying opportunities. At the end of the day, we are not no one's paying us a retainer. We get paid when you get paid. And so if you have someone who's not making you money for year after year, at a certain point, they just become less of a priority simply for the fact that you have to focus on the things that are making you money, and that doesn't mean, and some places they will drop people. Some places, it just depends on the person. They're like, I believe in you, I'm going to keep trying. But that it is a matter of economics, especially when you have a relatively wide roster of clients.
We did get one question here. Other than writing scripts and bettering our craft, what else can we do to make us more desirable to reps? So what beyond the
content?
Do you have an answer, Haley? Because I'm trying to think.
I mean, to be desirable, I think so everyone looks at when you come into representation differently. I think something that John and I again also look at it is the content, is how you write on the page, is that's what it's going to make people desirable. And I think the second part is usually the follow-up when you have that meeting and you're getting to know someone. It's like dating. It's like, let's see, are we going to be able to chat and have a conversation? Is it a one-sided conversation? Are you someone who's very charismatic in a room? Are you someone that's more muted? And I think so it helps us understand, okay, how do we also sell you in a room? Because it's not, obviously, your script is the first thing that's going to get you in the door. But the thing that's going to keep you in the door and going in and getting the job is also your personality. I think so. Again, not to say like if you're an introvert and don't like to talk to people or you feel really awkward, I don't think that's going to hurt you at all in terms of doing business. But I think so there's a way to navigate it, to be like, hey, I tend to be more shy. So like when I go into meetings, like we'll know like, okay, we cater these meetings very specifically versus I work with a lot of multi-hyphenates who know how to perform in a room. They know how to stand out. So they're just like, blah, blah, and they're big personalities. They can go into any room and make friends. And so everyone is different in that way. So I think so knowing who you are as a person when we meet you is something that is really important. And also I think so what we know what your expectations are, because I think so there's a lot of, again, similar to dating, when you talk to someone or you hear red flags, you're like, I don't know about that. And that helps us. And I think so it's also a chance for you to get to know us as well. Because I think so again, everyone thinks it's like, oh, I meet the first rep ever. You meet us at an event and you're like, this is the person that has to be my rep. It's like, maybe we're not the right match. Maybe we're someone who can help you advise. Maybe when you get other managers or something like that, maybe we'll just be friends and you'll be having a successful career, but we're able to help you navigate it with someone else who maybe is a better fit. So I think the desirableness is first, it's really like having a good script that we respond to ourselves. Again, everyone responds to different scripts. I remember I read one and I was like, And then my colleague signed that person and that person has taken off. And I'm like, well, I don't get it, but that's just not my taste. So again, everyone has
There's someone I passed on that then Haley signed, and I've been banging my head against the wall ever since.
That's yes.
I like it.
The only thing I would say, the only thing I would say about that, she knows. The only thing I would say about that is that like I do think that you have to see it and be like, okay, I get it, and like. Am I bummed that I didn't see it with this person? Absolutely. But at the same end, I would, I met them, I read their writing, and I was like, honestly, I was like, hey, I really like you, but I don't know that I love you enough to be the person out there advocating for you all the time. If I knew Haley was going to sign the person, that would have been tip, but it is one of those things where, I'm always trying to get Haley to sign. We don't have enough clients together. She's very picky, so I know when she likes something that it means a lot.
I'm very picky.
To go back to the question, I think when Haley said it's great. Look, the writing is. I always say the writing is what gets you in the room, but what keeps you moving can often be: are you a People don't like to hear it, but it's true. If you are a charismatic individual who automatically, engenders relation, people are like, I got to find a project with that person. They're amazing. They're so cool. Not only do I like their writing, but I also love them. You're just going to go further. And so I have had clients go and take improv classes or other things to get them to loosen up. And I don't necessarily know that that's going to make, I'll tell you, I don't think it's going to make someone who's introverted turn into like, suddenly they're like, boom, in the room. But it might take them from being like bad in the room to being okay in the room, which can sometimes be enough. But I think like Haley said, getting comfortable with who you are, and that's just going to lead to you being more comfortable in it. But it is a very social business, even over Zoom. It's a social business. People get hired because they meet executives, they meet producers, they meet directors, they meet actors, and they make those people feel confident that they're the writer who can, or the director in case of writer directors, they're the people who can because it's often why you see someone get hired for a lot of jobs after they write a hit movie, because people are like, well, this person must be touched by magic because they had something to do with a hit movie. And there's a belief in almost a confidence. They're like, well, if they wrote this movie, like APA reps, Derek Kolstad, who wrote John Wick. And, if you're hiring the guy who wrote John Wick, you're like, well, he wrote John Wick, he wrote Nobody, he's like all this great stuff. Can he do for this project what he did for John Wick and Nobody and the other stuff? Can he bring that magic touch to it? But if you don't have a track record of writing hit movies, then it's a little bit more of, okay, why are we choosing you and not someone else who might have written a hit movie? Well, we just believe in you. And so I would say you have to lend people your confidence, if you're not that person, you're not that charismatic person, you can maybe work on going from someone who's very uncomfortable to at least someone who can fake being comfortable.
Exactly.
But there have been times, I think, Haley, you did a meeting once with a client of mine or something, and it was very clear they were incredibly awkward, even over Zoom. And that got them passed on. I've had people get passed on because they like the writing, but they're like, there is such a awkwardness here that I don't know that I can put them in rooms with people.
I had never heard the go take an improv class suggestion, and I think that's pretty brilliant. It's really smart.
I couldn't think of anything else.
Yeah.
Someone told me like Toastmasters, but I don't think that exists anymore.
No, it's
I don't know what that is.
I think it was like an old thing where like people be like, you get used to giving toast, like you were at a dinner for somebody. It became like a public speaking group.
Oh, okay.
Or like an etiquette class or something to that effect. I mean, I personally, I am an introvert, and I actually did do that. I went and took drama classes, and I remember it like really forces you outside of your comfort zone, specifically if your drama teacher is throwing golf balls at you every single time she sees you showing up. So I don't know if that was legal or not, but that is what happens.
You mean literally throwing things at you?
What?
Literally throwing things at you.
Literally, I got hit, I remember, in the leg 3 times with a golf ball. It really hurt.
That'll prep you for meetings.
I mean, there's an interesting thing about what Haley was mentioning, multi-hyphenates. If you are a background as an actor, your job is to go and you're used to going into cold auditions and having to like convince the people that you're the person. And if you're going up against a bunch of writers and it's like normal writer, actor writer, they're gonna be like, wow, that person really knows that. Wow, they really lent me their confidence. They seem really passionate, and sometimes that can be the 10% that gets them the job.
Yeah.
Pushes them over the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just to put a button on that answer too, like even stuff that I send to you, John, like I'll say, hey, the script's really great, but also I just talked to the writer and I love talking to them and they're this and they're that. And it's more about their personality and what their goals are and all those other little intangible things that go along with it, in addition to being, a really good storyteller. So that does matter.
It does.
Ruth, did you want to grab that
Yeah,
next.
I wanted to grab David Draper's question over here. It got upvoted a couple times. So he asked, is it appropriate for a new writer to pitch or send a high concept, attractive logline synopsis, but not have a finished script while doing so?
Nope.
Or is it,
Nope.
no, never knew.
Nope.
That's an
Nope.
easy answer.
Don't do it.
there. So
Don't do it.
don't do it, guys. Everybody got
And
that? You
For
have
those who don't know, why is that the case?
Yeah.
It's just wasting people's time. I feel like it's wasting my time. It's like you're gonna send it, and like usually if something like that happens, we're like, yes. And like if John was like, hey Haley, I have this amazing writer, they have this, and you say the log line, I'm like, yo, John, that sounds amazing. Send it. He's like, oh, I actually don't have the script. I'll be like, well,
I just wanted to see if you like the idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, I'm not going to read a synopsis. I'm going to read a log line at best, and like, it's not my job to proofread your ideas for you. I have clients who I do that for,
Exactly.
So it's just, what's the rush, right? Like, it's not our job to be your idea things, and it creates a negative vibe. And plus you're like, oh, it'll be ready. Like, okay, well now I'm going to write it in like a month or something. And you're like, okay, it's probably not going to be good if you write it that fast. Yeah. Or if you're like, oh, well, I'll talk to you in 9 months or 6 months when it's ready. It's like, yeah, but I've forgotten who you are by then.
Yeah.
There wasn't.
Oh, I was sorry, Matt. I was gonna say that's actually, it's interesting because I've experienced that before where folks have said, oh, I have this script, and they'll send me a draft. And it's like literally the first draft because they're desperately wanting to get it to me right then. And you can tell instantly, like the correction, like even grammar and stuff is not there. And you're like, this is unreadable. And you go back to them like, well, it was just the first draft. It's like, never send a first draft. Like that's your first impression. I've had folks before where I've met at like a convention or something like a convention, but like an outing or something like that. And they're like, hey, and you talk to them, and the writer's like, hey, I'm actually working on the script. Like, I love to stay in touch. And once I have it ready, I was like, yeah. And so like, if we exchange emails or something like that, then it's like them just staying and like, hey, I'm working on it. I'm excited to share it to you and like even having that email chain. So if like for me, 6 or 9 months come by and they're like, hey, I finally read it. Like finished it. Like if you ever have time to read, here you go. And it's like, great. That's when you took the time to really put it in a good spot. And like you were actually being very catered versus thinking like, oh yeah, I'll just send this to you and just go ahead and do this, because we read so much. Like my pile is so high that like to send something that's not prepared and ready pisses me off more than anything.
Yeah.
It also makes you seem unprofessional. And I think that's one thing we're always looking at is because, not only do we represent our clients, but our clients represent us. And if we're putting you into professional situations and you're already acting not great, then that gives us a bit of a warning sign about how you would be if we were ever to work together, Yeah.
A few other people asked too. There was a time in Hollywood where you could sell a pitch without having ever sold a script.
People say that, but I don't believe that.
It wasn't in my era. The last 20 years, I think
that was like,
I know there was some guy who apparently drove around town was the idea man, but like that's a cool story. But like maybe in the go-go 80s or some shit. But like, it hasn't been for 40 years, So.
Well, that or unless you're Quentin Tarantino and you can just, do whatever the hell you want, I guess, on that front.
But again, it's like
Quentin Tarantino doesn't show anyone any of his stuff till it's done.
Yeah.
I think Joe Esterhazy sold something like that, but that was after he'd written Basic Instinct and I think another massive mega hit,
Yeah.
Well, that helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's a different, I do think if you were, I'm trying to think of like the hottest writer in town or something, and they went in, they're like, yeah, I've got this paragraph or something, then someone who really trusted them would be like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll buy it. But then the situation you've created for yourself, by the way, the situation which will not happen for 99.999% of people, is there's one buyer that will buy it, but there's 5 other places that'll be like, what the fuck, a paragraph? And then you're in a situation where you have one buyer, and so you don't have a lot of leverage. Whereas it would have been better just to write the screenplay, then you could go out to 5 to 6, 7 places and have everyone bidding on the same thing. So
that's a good
selling
point,
on pitch is generally not the world's best idea unless you are established enough and there's a particular situation. But the reality is, for most people who have not had a movie get produced or otherwise are like big deals, you're not going to be able to sell on pitch.
Right.
Yeah. That's tough.
Got another one for you. When you're considering whether to represent someone, are you also considering their genre diversity or how they can shift with the market as it develops?
Not the second one. The genre. I think so. Seeing how they can play into genre. I think so. If you are good at something, stick to it. But I think so. There's also there's a lot of writers who maybe start out in genre, like start in horror, and then eventually they want to make the next step and cut into comedy, or something how Jordan Peele did it, where he came from the comedy into the horror space. I think so. Like those were always open for our clients to try those. But I think so. It's like establish yourself in something first, get those fans, get those flags going, and then create something that's like, here's a new version of it. But I think so that's when, again, it even comes for us. It's like, there's a trust there for the client to rep relationship too. It's like, we want to trust that we're putting you into rooms where you're talking about the things we're currently looking at, versus sometimes you go in there, you're like, oh, I pitched like 5 comedies. I'm like, why would you pitch 5 comedies if you're a horror writer and we just talked about only horror projects?
Right.
It makes you look flighty and unprofessional. And
the
other thing is, it's so hard to be really, really good at one genre, right? Yeah. Like it's really hard just to be a good horror writer, or to be a good thriller writer, or to be a good comedy writer. It's really, a lot of writers who are coming up, they're like, I can do everything. And I'm like, but can you do one thing really, really well? Because even doing one thing really, really well is really hard. And the reality is, when we're talking about super famous writers or directors, we're not like, oh, David Fincher, the comedy guy, it's like people generally think of David Fincher, they think of dark kind of thriller kind of stuff, or they think of, the Farrelly brothers, they're thinking of comedy, The reality is, if we're pigeonholing some of the A-list directors, the same is kind of true of writers. And there are writers who can kind of move around a lot, the John Augusts of the world, if you will, but those are few and far between. And the reality is, even trying to make a living being really good in a single or, kind of certain kind of areas is hard enough. I would say for me, I'm like, if someone's good at horror, I feel like they could be good at like thriller and then action. And like for me, comedy and horror are like a little like the opposite ends of the spectrum, if you will. Although people do try to do it a lot. And I would personally point out that there have not been a lot of successful horror comedy movies, financially successful personally. But the simple reality is, I think, speaking for both Halle and myself, is we're focused on, can you do one thing really, really well? That is we're not focused on like, can you do 3 things okay? Can you do one thing really, really well? Because that's our best shot at getting you paid, is if you write one thing really, really well, as opposed to doing 2 or 3 things okay. And you might be like, well, I can do 3 things really, really well. I'm like, I doubt that.
Yeah. We're like,
I doubt that. You might think you can, but you probably can't. Yeah. It's hard enough to do one thing really, really well. And this is a stat that goes around a lot, but there are more players in the NFL than there are working feature writers in the WGA West. Like, that's how hard it is to be a continuing working writer, and the level of quality. And because this is particularly features, but Halle is a features person, and I do both. But just speaking about features, if you were going up for an action or a thriller opportunity or something like what we call an OWA, an open writing assignment, you are most likely going up against people who've already had movies produced, maybe even some of your heroes, I'm going, and then this, oh, wow, they're also pitching on it, so it's one of those things like, my wife was pitching on the Barbie movie, and, it was going great. And then Greta Gerwig's like, actually, I think I'd like to write a Barbie movie, and I can't get into details. It all ended up kind of working out, but it was one of those things when like, you're doing great until Greta Gerwig raises her hand, and you're like, okay, that's hard to compete with Greta Gerwig. So, that's one of those things just to be aware of, is that to even do one lane is incredibly difficult.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Matt, because you had said the other part of like writing, like with the change, like kind of the changing times. So it kind of reminds me where for a while, nobody's writing these erotic thrillers or the YA rom-coms and stuff. But all of a sudden, when they started building up again, having writers come out of the woodwork saying, oh, by the way, I wrote this rom-com, I wrote this thing. And you're like, but that's not what you write. Don't write for something just because you feel like that's the thing you should be doing. Because like right now, everyone's looking for action. I got to write an action thing. It's like, do you like action? No. Well, don't write action. Please don't do that. It's like, if you're like, hey, this is a time to explore it. If you ever want to explore it, I'm always for that. But again, I don't think it makes sense because you're like, oh, people always, or like you come from kids work and you're like, people are like, I've always wanted to write a genre thing. You've always wanted to go take a shot at it. We'll see if it makes sense. But you're doing it because of what the market is saying. That's the thing that,
or what you think the market. I cannot tell you the number of people. It's the go-to move is, I wrote a horror movie because horror movies are easy to write or they sell all the time. I have heard that more than I've heard anything. It's always like, I wrote a horror movie. Oh, do you like horror movies? Oh, no, not at all. But they're easy to make. So I figured, and I'm like, they're not. They're not. And I've done horror probably as much or more than anything. So I know it really, really well. And it's very hard to find an original, interesting horror concept to some degree because so many people have written shitty ones because they think horror is an easy thing to do. By the way, Haley, and we always talked about erotic thrillers, not you and I personally, but all this talk, they never fucking made any.
No, they haven't. It's hilarious. And they still ask for it in the market.
Except for Deep Water. And that one, that Ben Affleck and his former girlfriend, it still went straight to streaming.
Yeah. And nobody.
And had a famous director. They never made any erotic thrillers.
And I think
rom-coms are supposed to be back. They never really came back though.
No, I think it's one of those things where they're like saying like, this is where the market is. And it's like, yes, that's where people in the market are excited for. And I think so. One thing John and I and other reps try to do is we're the tastemakers. We are trying to make sure we shift it. Because yes, the studios will be like, I want this. But until you bring them something that has not been seen yet, or something that's really fresh and new, take on something, they're gonna get excited about that. And then all of a sudden it's going to be like, we want to make all this. So instance, I know, and John, I don't remember if you ever heard this, but like when Borat did really well during the pandemic, everyone's like, we want to find our Borat. And that's like, that's a ridiculous request. No. I was like, Borat is Borat and it's there. Like, that doesn't make sense that you would, as like, even if I brought something to you that was similar to that, you would be like, oh, it reminds us too much.
It happens all the time. They're like, we really want X. And they're like, here's X. And they're like, yeah, but it's not exactly X, whatever X was.
Yeah.
And also we'll have clients and they'll be like, so I just had a meeting, change everything. They want erotic thrillers now. And then we can be like, they've been saying that for 3 years and they never bought a single fucking one, you know? And it's just, and we have the institutional memory. Like there is a project, I won't name it, Haley, but I think you know the one. So we have had clients go after it that they've been looking for a writer on for over a year. And every single time, you know what I'm talking about? The remake of, you know what?
Oh, yes. Oh, I know exactly which one. The one.
And like every client's like, oh my God, I just met with big production companies. They're looking for writers on this. And like, they've been, it's a rush project. And we're like, they've been looking at writers for that for over a year and a half now. And we've had 3 different clients pitch on it. And it is a total, they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
You know, so we are able to kind of look at that and be like, hey, here is what's really going on institutionally, because they say this, but you'll spend 3 or 4 months working on it and then you'll get it and you'll realize, oh no, they've just been hearing, they don't know what they want, but they apparently have a good idea what they don't want. So it's what, you know, it's funny. There are a lot of properties in town that are just like, I think of as cursed properties because they're big pieces of IP or remakes, but no one really knows what they want to do with them. And so it just ends up in this circle and it draws in a new hot writer because the new hot writers, I've always been a fan of this movie or this toy or whatever. And then they waste time on it. And then, but no one will ever pull the trigger because for whatever reason, there's a car property and they're like, I won't say what the property is, but it has to do with cars. And they're just like, okay, this property concerns automobiles, but the cars can't talk like in Cars, and the cars can't transform like in Transformers, and they can't race really fast like in Fast and Furious.
so
but not like that. But find the other thing, and you're like, but what's left? There's not a lot left.
Exactly.
I don't know what's left, and no one has ever figured out what's left.
It's about a parking lot.
Yes, exactly, with a whole bunch of cars. But I think to say that, for instance, if you are a writer that loves to do erotic thrillers and you're good at it, that will come through. So I think if you're already writing something like that versus don't move yourself to the market, write what you're excited about. I always tell clients
absolutely. That's if you love it and you're already in on it, go for it. It's funny. I was talking about my wife, Elise Hollander, who wrote, who's, by the way, whose office this is. This is Elise's office, not my office. My office.
It's very pretty.
They're doing a book. They're putting up one of these bookcases in it right now. But this is why this is Elise's taste, which is very glamorous and classy. But Elise wrote Blonde Ambition, the Madonna biopic that topped the 2016 Blacklist. And I swear to God, when Elise was still running in 2015, she turned to me and she's like, "No one's going to care about this. Nobody cares about Madonna. Nobody cares. It's nobody cares. Nobody's going to like." She kind of had that momentary freak out, and I was like, "No, we care." So I think I have to believe someone else is going to care. Exactly. And then it came out, and it was the year of Me Too. It was really the year of re-examining all. It's kind of like part of that thing when people started it was kind of like the O.J. Simpson documentary. You kind of re-examined the female DA from a different point of view and from her perspective and things like that. And so it really fit nicely in. Plus, it's an amazing script, but Elise didn't write it to try and fit into a certain time. She also didn't write it thinking like, oh, if I write this, I can get a career in music biopics or music movies, which she has since gone on to write a bunch of music and music related projects. But it wasn't a coherent strategy. It was something that she thought was really, really, what was really, really interesting. And so she just followed her gut, and it led to a career, writing a lot of music movies, but she likes music, so it's not a problem. But it came from her, something that she felt strongly about and something she liked, as opposed to looking at the market and being like, given all these market forces, what is the best thing to write? Because it took like a year and a half or a year for her to write that screenplay. And so if you're sitting and you're like, what does the market want right now? By the time you're done with the script and it's good, the market could easily have shifted and changed, or someone could beat you to market with a similar idea or whatever. So at a certain route, you have to write from your heart. The only thing I would say is, don't write a Western, you'll break your heart. I'm just kidding. If you really love Westerns, but I would say, weirdly, I would say as reps, and Halle, I don't know if you've ever thought of this way. I think to some degree, what we're doing is we are giving you the percentages. So if a client came to me and said, I want to write a Western, it's going to be $100 million Western starring teenagers, and I don't care. I just have to write it. Now, number one, Westerns are the number one thing that nobody wants in this town. I can meet with company, they'll be like, we'll do anything, just not a Western. And then the second thing they would say is nothing starring teenagers. And that's because there's no teenage movie stars, nobody. And then the third thing they would say, and nothing expensive unless like it's somehow validated by the concept. So $100 million Western starring teenagers is like the hardest thing you could ever do. But if a client said, I've got to do it, it's like, I'd be like, okay, but just know it's probably not going to sell. And here's all the reasons why. And also, if you write a really good Western, it's going to be hard for people to like, if someone's like, God, I wish we would hire someone to write a Western and be like, here's your sample. But if someone's like, oh, we really want to write a contemporary murder mystery thriller, it's hard to use the Western as a sample for that. So, but I really do think part of our job is essentially when a client wants to write something, we look at it. If they really want to write it, they can do whatever they want. We're not their bosses. But I say, hey, if you write this, I think there's maybe a 5 to 10% chance we can sell it, Yeah. And if you know that and you're okay with that, just don't be upset when we take it out and nobody wants it. Whereas I'll never be like, this is 100% guaranteed to sell, but I'm like, I feel really, really good about this. Exactly. I feel really good about this. And that I can't guarantee a sale ever, but I can say, hey, I think this has a higher chance of selling than this thing. If the client says, I don't care, I still want to write my own thing, that's okay. Just don't get upset when the lower percentage shot unfortunately doesn't work out. Right. So that's kind of how I've kind of seen it, as almost being like, we know the market and we can say, hey, given this, I think this, because we're talking to people all the time, but then you have to write your own thing. Halle, does that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then I saw someone make a comment about Yellowstone. So Yellowstone, for instance, it's a TV show, and Taylor Sheridan, and also someone who is a credited writer who has done some amazing movies, and he does a lot of these specifically as like I had someone, they used to call it red state films. So they always take place in kind of red states, but they're these like gritty but very sophisticated films.
Neo-Westerns.
Yes, neo-Westerns. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so that's different. And like, yes, people will ask for it, but again, 100, specifically what John's saying, 100 million with teenagers. So we're always taking those things. Mm-hmm. So I think there's those kind of things. And again, TV market is so different than the film market as well, because I think so. Sometimes with TV, obviously they'll take risk, but it's a lot harder. It's like, especially if you're a new writer into the business, they could buy your script, but doesn't mean it's going to get made. You have to have a supervisor on it. You have to have this. There's all these other steps you would have to take. And again, it's all the things that hopefully as reps, we're able to be a part of to get you to that level where you can sell a Yellowstone, where you can sell, I think so someone just said Westworld, something like that. But again, even Westworld, it's like has a sci-fi bent.
It's a remake.
Yeah. And it's just like, actually, I did not know it was a remake. So I think
Haley.
I didn't know. I only watched like 2 episodes.
I didn't
okay.
Movie. You should see it
actually. So
he calls me out all the time when I say I haven't seen some big famous movie. So then I go and
I get called out all the time for it, and I'm just like, I was like, have you seen High School Musical? Best
If
movie
you've seen
ever.
the first season of Westworld, and like that scene, they managed to do that in the movie in 1 hour and a half thing.
Mhm.
They stretched it all the way out.
That's a good point. I'm glad someone brought up Taylor Sheridan too, because well, with Westworld, you're talking about, it's not a Western, it's a
sci-fi.
It's a sci-fi genre mix, sci-fi thriller, part
It's
Western,
Jurassic
part
Park with
futuristic.
robots going insane by the writer
Yeah,
of
that's
Jurassic
you're talking
Park.
about traditional Westerns that don't particularly sell, that aren't really doing anything new for the genre. So
Exactly.
I mean, I can't think of the last Western movie that got made. I guess
Magnificent Seven?
True Grit.
that wasn't a remake, I
no,
guess.
I'm at the Netflix one.
Oh, yes. The Harder They Fall.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's probably the last one that got made, and that was a very special circumstance. Although there was also like a 40-minute kind of like proof of concept or something that was made for it, and took years to get made. And like, yeah, that's successful, but like that's kind of the exception. I can't think of a theatrically released Western that did good, because that's what people are always thinking is like, what has made money recently, and how do we make it? But anyways, I don't want to get devolved into talking about Westerns all day long.
No, but I think that a good overarching point to make to pull from this is that writers really should look at not just which movies are successful, but their origin story and why they were successful. Mm-hmm. Was it something that an already established person brought to a studio and that's why it got made, or was it a brand new writer? And this is why
even Yellowstone was a total like shit show to actually get made, which is one of the reasons why the ownership percentages and why it's not exactly on Paramount Plus and because all this stuff, because people were like, really, who the fuck's going to watch this, you know?
Yeah. And that's like,
so I mean, look, but I get I think if there's one thing I can say, what Haley and I are saying is like, you have to write what you truly believe in, and not try to write. You can be aware of the marketplace. You know, if you come to me, I got to sell my next spec. And I said, okay. And they said, it's going to be a Western. And be like, well, okay, that's hard, you know, but so you can be aware of the marketplace and it behooves you to be aware of it. But I think when you start writing to it is when you can make mistakes. You know, the mistakes I've made in my career personally, and I think this is a decent analogy, is I've signed people who I didn't necessarily 100% believe in their writing, but other people told me, oh, wow, or they knew someone famous, or they'd worked with someone famous, or everyone around was like, oh, they're great. They're on the way up. You know, I didn't trust my instincts, and it was early in my career. Yeah. So I feel like the mistakes I've made in terms of representing people have been when my heart wasn't entirely in it, but I ignored my heart and I went with what other people were telling me. And I think that's similar for writing something. It's rare that you've heard someone be like, yeah, I wrote this thing and I didn't really like it, or I wasn't really that into it, but it sold. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but what you've heard a lot more often is I wrote this thing and, you know, I was nervous it was going to sell, or I didn't think it was going to be of the thing. And then actually it turned out to work really, really well, you know? So I think that's our kind of takeaway is be aware of the thing, but write the thing you're passionate about.
I like that. I think I've told writers multiple times on that avenue, if you're trying to chase a trend, then you're already behind on that front.
Yeah,
like
exactly. 100%.
Have to write to what's true, what excites you. I think that's absolutely what we can culminate that to. Sure. You know, after this discussion, I just curious here, how many projects do you guys just have that are like dead bodies around you that just like went out and they never got picked up, or
most,
like I feel like agents and managers like live in a cemetery of projects around. I mean, do you ever resurrect projects?
Yeah, 100%. Most things don't sell, right? Most things just don't sell. That's just, you know, most pitches, you know, in baseball, you know, most of the pitches don't get hit. You know, it's just the reality of it.
I love these analogies.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, baseball and cemeteries. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
But they do come back sometimes. Like I've had many projects come back. A good script never dies is my kind of going rule. Is a good script. Like I know David Coggeshall, I hope I pronounced his name right. There's a movie getting made right now that he wrote a draft of by Lee, or I think it's in post at Lee Daniels, and like it came back from nowhere, you know. And so things, if you've written a great script, it never, it might truly die if it gets bought by a studio and has enough money against it. But that's what it is.
But no, and I think, sorry, John, to just get back off of you. It's like, I think so. The part that I love about features, and then like I tell this to clients, it's like your script won't ever, especially it's like unless as obviously buying a studio, there's a lot of money against it. But in terms of the overall concept, a script will never really die. Like, yes, sometimes it'll get really cold. Maybe it doesn't make as much sense. But I think so what's the beauty of film is like, obviously you have your studio side, but you have the independent side as well. So there's always someone new who will be coming up to be like, yo, I want to look for a script like this. And you're like, I happen to have this one yet. And like, you're not gonna be like, yeah, it was written 8 years ago, but you're like, oh, I have this one script. You send it to them and they could be like, I absolutely love it. Let's do some tweaks and let's make it. So I think so there's always things like that can happen.
If the market changes, suddenly everyone wants to run like thriller, you were in rock thriller 6 years ago. Maybe
it works. Yeah. Maybe you got to dust it off if you have to make sure it stays relevant. There's not like a person or reference in there that's too old or something like that. But
everybody's into MySpace.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's into
things a little bit. Yeah. No, I mean, that can be very heartening for writers who feel like they put their heart and soul into a project. You send it out, doesn't get picked up. And it's like, it kind of rips out of your chest a little bit there. But I mean, if there's opportunity for like projects to be resurrected, I think that can be, wonderful on that front. And
there is opportunity. Yeah. I wouldn't say it always happens. And sometimes you have to look at the project and be like, what do I learn from this? Like I had a project we took that I thought was 100%. I was really sure it was going to sell. It was just such a great idea. And what we realized was there was a casting issue, which was the main character. It was about a father and a daughter. And it was written for like a father to be, I don't know, in his like 50s or 60s, and then have a daughter in her 20s. And we realized when we took it out that most actors in their 50s or 60s, they don't want a daughter in their 20s. They want a love interest in her 20s. And so they're like, I don't want a daughter in my 20s. That makes me seem old. And I was like, oh boy, I'd never realized that. And I realized it now.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Right.
I learned that about like actresses. They like, if they're like in their 40s or something in real life, they still want to have a kid that's 2 years old. So they're still very young. Like
they want to play their 30s. They want to play even if in real life, they have teenage children.
Yep. It's so fascinating.
I like that. It's a matter of perception. And just to segue, I'm sorry, Matt, but that was a really great opportunity to go into like this whole topic of kind of ageism potentially in the industry. We have a question in here that's been upvoted a lot. And the question is if a new writer is in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, and they want to be represented, is their age a liability? Are you guys particularly seeking younger writers in their 20s and 30s? Are younger writers more desirable?
No, I mean, for myself, I don't think age is an issue. I think so. Again, it's what's on the page. A story I will share with this group. I remember one time when I was a coordinator still, and we talk about these different potential clients that have come in and all this stuff. And there was one person who had came in, and I think they were probably about 55 or something like that. And I brought up to the group, I was like, well, how many writers when they just talked about their experience in life type of thing. And I was like, well, how old are they? They're like, you can ask that. I was like, well, why not? They're like, that's ageism. I was like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't sign them. I was like, I think we need more people who are in their 50s or in their 60s, because sometimes there's stories out there that are taking the perspective is of someone who is in their 60s or who in their 40s. And a 25-year-old cannot write to someone in their 40s. It's like they don't know that experience. And yes, I work with a lot of young writers, but obviously they write teenager, they do this, like, because they have experienced that. But they're like, I'm going to write someone in their 80s. I'm like, unless you're writing a biopic of your parent and you can actually get this information and understand that thing, but it's like, you're still not going to understand the experience because you have not lived that life. So I think so anyone who is older than the age of 40 or 40 plus, I think so. It's like, there's still a market there. And I think so. It's something that people should take more consideration for. I think so in the newer space, but again, I think so it's going to come to making sure your script has this, I would say, freshness, not as like, it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm writing in a sense that it's not even like how it comes off. I think so it's one where like, it feels static. I think so it's just going to come to like, your project just still has to feel like, okay, it's going to still speak to all audiences and everything, not just the fact that you happen to be old. It
has to be relevant is the word I always use. Like, how does it feel relevant? Relevant can have a malleable definition, right?
Yeah.
I want some hello fellow kids shit.
Yeah.
I would say I do think it's more of an uphill battle for someone in their 50s or 60s.
Are you talking about in the TV realm, John, or just in general?
Yeah, that's just where I was going with it. Yeah. 50s or 60s in the TV space. Because, and it's not something I've actually encountered, but I've certainly heard stories. If you're coming in for your first job, it sometimes can be tough for a showrunner who is that age or possibly younger to have the most junior writer on their staff. Now, look, if the TV show is about Navy SEALs and you used to be a Navy SEAL, then I think you can push past that, But I think it's not an issue I've ever kind of dealt with, but I will say that like there are times, and the other thing I would say is sometimes you have an issue if writers are in their 60s, and you're meeting with a lot of executives who are in their 30s and 40s, and sometimes they're just going to bond a little bit more with someone who's closer to their own age, Now, look, does that mean that it's impossible? Absolutely not. But I think, you do have to be aware that it might be a little trickier than it would be otherwise. I've actually weirdly seen the inverse of it. I had a client who I signed right at an undergraduate college at USC, and she also kind of reads a little bit younger. And it was actually kind of tricky I felt early on, people were a little reticent to staff her because she seemed almost like too young, weirdly. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's a problem that goes away over time. And she just got staffed on her first TV show this year. She was on the blacklist last year. I think that gave her a little bit more people being like, oh, okay, and then she's now like in her mid-20s. And so, but that's not the world's biggest issue. But I would say there are these things that come up, and you need to be. That's one thing I talked about with her was like, hey, you might be aware that like people might see you a little bit like as an assistant or something. Or even when my wife was like, my wife was 26 when she was number one on the blacklist, and sometimes she would meet with people and they'd be like, oh, wow, and there, was a little bit there. Sometimes it threw them, especially like the 60-year-old presidents of companies or something. Mm-hmm. Were like, oh, you seem as old as my assistant. They say weird shit. Yeah. So, there are things I would say, to speak to Haley's point, I don't think it's like, or agree with Haley, I don't think it's insurmountable, but I would say you sometimes have to be a little bit aware of like what unique situations or issues might potentially arise and how do I kind of like address those.
Yeah.
So, that's good. We don't even need moderators. You guys could just talk and have all this insightful stuff for hours and hours. This is great so far. Let's take a 5-minute break. Before we do, I just want to address one quick question that I already know the answer to. Are managers and agents more reluctant to sign a writer if they're from another country, meaning outside of the US?
I think for TV, it would be tricky.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think for TV, it would be tricky.
Like you're still based in the other country and you want to like get staffed. It's like, I think, if you want to work in TV, you got to move to LA. Unfortunately, you
don't have to be in LA. You can be in America. Like there's still a lot of Zoom rooms. LA would be preferable if you're a TV writer. For feature writers, I have a fair number of clients who are outside the United States. It doesn't matter as much. No, it does. I mean, look, you'd want to speak English decently well. I mean, that would be reflected in your writing and in your meetings and such. But it's not the world's biggest. It's not for features. I don't think it's a huge issue whatsoever. For TV, I do think it could be an issue, especially like if you're in, I don't know, Italy or something, and you're doing a Zoom room. It's going to be you're going to be Zooming in the middle of the night or something when they start at 10 a.m. or something. Yeah.
I mean, I've had clients who have lived in Italy during this time and done their Zoom rooms and no one's even known. But I think so that's different. Obviously, they've established themselves here and then they went to go somewhere else. I think so sometimes crossing over, it can be tough with the time zones. But yeah, I mean, TV can be tough in that way. And again, somebody had mentioned quickly about a visa. If you're in another country, doing it, you're okay. But if you're coming here, obviously having the visas and stuff, it's a whole nother obstacle. But I think so being a really great feature writer and working internationally is fine. I have a lot of clients that work, like I have one who works in Pakistan all the time. And so like it's the times, I don't know how he does. He's a fucking night owl, but it's like, it's one where it works because it's like features is his number one priority. And obviously developing TV is another thing for him too. So I think so it's just depending on the subject and the stuff you want to do, but.
All right. On that, take 5, as they say in Hollywood. I don't know what they say in Hollywood, but let's take 5. We'll reconvene here at about 5:06, 5:05.
I think there's so many questions in the Q&A. There's no way we're going to be able to get to them all, but hopefully
there's 49 in there.
Well, why don't we hop back in? Ready, Matt?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that. And just to address Jeannie's question first, for those who are away, which was probably most of you, not to leave it open-ended or to ask the leading question, but you guys just want log lines, right? You're not looking like you don't need to submit.
Are we back on? Is this a back on question?
We are back on now. Yes.
No more breaks that are not breaks.
No. Log lines only, right?
In terms of like when somebody wants to send us something?
Correct. In terms of the query and stuff, you don't need attachments and
Do
additional
you even
materials.
get queries, Haley? Do you even accept queries?
I'm not allowed to accept any. So I always feel bad. And everyone who's on here, if you email me a query, I will have to delete it. I've sometimes.
How do you find new writers, Haley?
Damn, Zell.
I was curious. I'm not that queries are the only way. I'm just curious what your method. I know what my methodology is. I'm curious what your methodology is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of referrals. So obviously from a lot of managers, I feel like that comes in. A lot of my colleagues, because we all know different people. But I feel like the film festival circuit. So I go to I look up at a lot of film festivals, the ones I can't attend, and seeing which movies. And then sometimes I end up just doing deep dives on like Studio System or IMDb. There's a movie or a show that I watched, and I'm like, oh, I'll see the different types of directors that are on it. And then it's like, oh, who are the producers? And I'll literally just kind of click. It's like a Wikipedia thing and just find myself in a hole and then come up to a movie that I'm like, oh, this sounds cool. And then I'll watch it. And if like I like it and I don't see that they have reps, I've reached out before for that. But I think the majority of the time, how I end up finding my clients is through like for referrals from either managers or like close friends. For like, hey, this is writer who is looking for reps. Do you want to read them?
Are you ever on the Blacklist website or anything like that?
I am, and I've used it to read scripts for clients. So like director clients that I have, like trying to find scripts for them.
Oh, interesting.
So I've used it before for that. I mean, and actually even writing competitions, I've read the Nichols. I feel like I've been burned about that every so often. But in terms of even writing competitions, I've had clients from those as well, which is nice. I think I've only had one client from a pitch, which she didn't even pitch to me, but it was from John, who said, you have to go talk to her. And she became my first.
Who was it? What was that?
This is Danielle. You didn't realize you're the one who set it all up. She became my first client.
Oh, wow. Your first client?
Yeah, it was through Zell.
Oh, wow.
That's the regret I was mentioning.
That was a regret. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he introduced me to her at the dessert.
I was like,
table.
here's some great people.
Yeah, it's like, I heard your pitch. It's great. And I've never
I went through all the USC writers and I was like, here's the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
That's how much I love Haley. And she's like, great, I'll sign this person and they'll have is she like upper level writer at this point?
She is. She's been crushing it.
with a buddy of mine as her manager now. Crazy.
Yeah. So
on that note too, you're never going to be able to catch every potential.
It's
talent,
particularly
right?
funny when you're like, this person's really talented. You should 100% sign them. I'm too stupid to do so, but I'm sure you can do that.
The one that got away.
I forgot. You know what? I forgot about that, Haley.
And that's how I tell everyone that story. I was like, this manager, and I never blast her name when I tell people like on like Zooms and stuff. I never blast her name. I should just blast her name because everyone can come to you.
Totally, just do it. Be like, he was smart enough to recognize a great talent and too stupid to sign it for himself.
But he handed it. He handed me to her. I handed her to me, and I ran with it.
When I would meet with all the USC people, I think I signed someone, and I was like, "Who else should I try to sign from your class?" They're like, "Oh, Danielle, 100%. She's like the most talented of us all." So I think we met twice, and I was like, "Wow, this person's really cool." I don't know if I'm the right person, but maybe Haley, like,
you were great at it. Yeah.
Yeah, John, you definitely do not have any level of regret over that signing for sure. It's just
yeah, I can tell. There's
every detail. It's all vivid.
I remember it now. I did not remember. I forgot that. I literally had gone through all the USC because I take the USC. They have like a pitch fest thing, and even if I don't go, like I didn't go this year because I was up in Canada visiting my family. But I always go through the book and I look for people. And I think we signed someone out this year as well. And so I always go through that book really closely because it's a great way to find people is USC. We do the same thing for UCLA and LMU because they're all the local schools.
That's actually the perfect transition for my next big question, which is not just where do you both find people? Because we kind of have an idea.
I just asked you that.
Right. But like, well, let me revisit that and go to one of the other questions first, because I want to try and get to as many different questions as possible. But I do have
John
an
did mention the blacklist, right? I mean, do you
Yeah.
comb through the blacklist?
The blacklist website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I find people from the blacklist website. I find people from queries. I find people from obviously Script Pipeline and other other prestigious competitions, Coverfly, and yeah, like in queries. And like I found Headhunter, which is #1 script back in 2020 through a query.
Right.
My client who I just tweeted about his movie Rapping, which Nidhi and Bon Jovi produced and stars Eric Naum. He was a client I found through a query. So yeah, but I mean, I get like so many at this point. I probably get 50 of them a day or something.
Like 50 queries?
Yes, 50 different queries a day. Yeah.
Oh.
So I get close to like, I don't know what the fucking number is a month, a lot. So almost like 2,000 or something. I forget, but
2,000 queries a month.
Probably, yeah. Well, if it's 50, it's 50 a day. That's like what, 500 every 10 days. I guess more like 1,500 or something.
Yeah. Well, John, is that unusual for a manager to have an open query inbox? Like, I mean, generally it seems as though like, managers and agents get their clients or potential clients filtered to them through either an organization or like another person or a referral or whatnot, like a contest or competition. But I mean, is it unusual for you?
It's hard for me to say because I never, I didn't work at other management companies. So I remember I was on a panel in Austin and someone's like, is it true that managers only sign people off referrals? I was like, that's crazy. No one would only ever sign someone off referrals because then you're offloading all your work to someone else. You're basically saying until someone else pre-approves it, I don't read. And I was like, I sign people off of other things. And then this manager next to me, who's the other manager in the panel, was like, I only sign off off referrals. And I was like, oh. But then it was crazy to me because it was like she's like, either from a client has already read it or my assistant's already read it. Then I was like, kind of like, what the fuck do you do? Right? Like, it's like she waits for someone to pre-approve people. And that to me was a little weird. I mean, she seemed cool, but like, that's a little weird to me that like you wait for someone else to like something. So someone else has to like something before you like it, Yeah. And that was a little just for her as a manager, because I think we're a little closer to the ground. I'm curious. I mean, Haley, when other managers bring you clients, and I guess when you sign them and you ask how they met, what is the more common ways that other managers find clients from?
I mean, I think so. You're the only one who I've ever talked to that's found it through query. But again, like there is success out of it. I think so. Like, I think so. I think so. The others that I find are through competitions, not necessarily the person who's won the competition, just like, hey, they applied to these 5 or 6, and they maybe made the top 20 and their script was on the top 20 of some of these as well. Some through their like mutual friends are like, hey, I met this person at a party through a friend of a friend of a friend. We chatted, I read their script and I loved it. And then sometimes it's like maybe through like a mutual friend where they signed it from someone else. So like it tends to be a lot of that. In terms of the referral, I haven't heard that as often. I feel like that it is weird because as managers, it's like you're usually there like really early on. And yes, sometimes us as agents, we will do that too. Like I had that with one client, signed him very early on and he's doing well. But most of the time it's not, you as a manager is like, that's, you put in a lot of that work and get that person kind of like polished and ready. And then you bring it to us and we're like, great, let's go all do this together. So it is weird if a manager is like, I only do it based off referrals. And it's just like, what do you bring to the table at that point? You're just waiting.
I mean, like Kobe Ajiman, I don't know if you've worked with him. He was through a query. It's interesting. Like, Roxanne Paraditas, who's another client with ABA, she was through one of my clients I was already working with, was like, hey, I did a lab with her. I really liked her. My client, Studi Malhotra, another APA client, she was on the Blacklist website. She had got her pilot script. I got it at 8. And that led to me seeing it on the weekly recommended scripts, which led to me reading it, which led to me loving it and wanting to meet with her. So, it's interesting, the kind of various different methodologies. I do know there are other managers out there who read queries, because I remember hearing about like the headhunter writer had met with other people off of her query or the query. So like, I think like there's I would probably, I have no idea on the percentages, but there's definitely some people at some more prominent companies, and you're probably luckier going to the newer companies or the less prominent companies if you're querying. Like, I don't know that Anonymous Content or Management 360 or 3Arts are reading queries necessarily.
I could venture a guess on a percentage, and it's probably under 20%, I would say.
Yeah. So for example, my friend James Robbins Early, he just started his own management company. It was announced this month. Like, whenever they get their emails up and running, because I actually think it's not ready yet when I talked to him today, that's be a place to query, because they're brand new and they've got brand new managers, you know? I think Aaliyah, who's over there, she's brand new. So like, that's a person to hit up, because she probably is reading her queries at this point. Maybe not, but you have a better chance of getting her to read your query than you do to get a Guyman Cassidy, who's a massive manager over at 360 to read your query. Yeah. So, and I would also basically recommend that most really hot, don't go to Guillermo del Toro's agent. He's not going to read your query, you know. But if you go to someone who just got promoted, maybe, you know, it's look for the people who are looking to establish their careers, as opposed to the people who are already really established.
Yeah, and for us at the agency, it's just very we don't want to get into any issues if it comes to it. Like, obviously, if you send something and then I'm like, yeah, send it over. Then you see that a client of mine has happened to write something similar, all this. So it's just like, it's more of a protection for yourself. And so none of that stuff ever comes back. But again, it sucks because for us not to accept them, because I think so that it's such a gatekeeping way for people who don't have access to this business. But at the same time, it is also for your protection. I think so, as much as people are like, oh no, I was like, it is, because there are people out there who will take people's ideas. It's not super, super, super common. Like, I have not experienced that fully, but it is stuff that I've heard stories where people will do that. So I think so it is like, just know and do your research on the people you're also sending queries to. Don't just send in hello, because you can tell you when you just mass send it to folks.
We can definitely send. The other thing I would say that also comes is, and this is like a slight pivot off of what Haley's talking about in terms of be aware. What I've seen a lot is producers who are nobodies attaching themselves to projects, and then it's a real fucking pain in the ass down. So I'll give you an example. I'll be vague, but there was a project that a client has that we were getting all excited to take out. And then they're like, oh yeah, there's a producer attached to it. And we're like, what? Yes. And it turned out it was a buddy of his, and he had like a 1.5 year long option on it. And we're like, okay, well, we can't do anything with this until that option expires, you know, because we don't want to, because they control the script, and anything we do that makes it good only plays into their hands. So, or another thing I've seen, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to get into the legal thing, but like you have a producer, the producer gives you some notes, you enact those notes on the script, and then maybe the producer never does any more work on it or whatever. And then years later, the script sells and the producer's like, I gave notes on that. And there's a whole legal chain of title thing. And it's less about actually what can be proven in a court of law, and more about the fact that people, if someone says, hey, I have a legal claim, or they even make some kind of like lawsuit, like early rumblings, business affairs is like, what the fuck? Let's get the fuck out of this. Even if there's not much there. And so what you'll see more often than not is like, if you're going to start working with a producer or a director or something like that, ideally, you get what's called an attachment agreement that will protect you. You'll say you were attached to the project for a year as a producer, 1.5 years. At the end of that, all the rights revert back to me. This is something that you should get a lawyer to drop for you. You should not just download a form off the internet. But because at that point, you're protecting yourself and saying, any work I do, it comes back to me at the end of this period. And if you don't get something drawn up, that's more of an issue than getting something drawn up. There being no paperwork is a bad thing, not a good thing. And so you want to be careful. Look, if someone reads your script and then sends you some unsolicited notes, you can just ignore, and you never talk to them. That's okay. Ignore that, right? But if you work with a producer for 6 months on the project and then nothing ever happens with it, down the road, unless there's an agreement in place, they could, I'm not saying they will, but they could cause issues of it. And that has been a thing where I've had to disentangle projects later on because someone got involved 2 years ago, and it creates a weird issue, and it's better to resolve it early. It's better to resolve it early and have it resolved than go sell something and then business affairs finds out about it after the fact. So just be careful who you get into business with, because it can linger on a project unless you have legal paperwork done. It can linger on the project for a while. And Haley, I'm guessing by your expression that you've experienced that once or twice.
Yes, very much so. And I've also had to help friends who are writers who are experiencing stuff like that. I've had to go and step up as a pseudo agent, ask a lot of questions, and then you get emails of them like, well, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say something ridiculous. And they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is what happens. And so you just have to be careful in those scenarios. And just know, again, do your research when people are reaching out. Again, even if you're new into this business, sometimes looking people up, doing things, asking someone like this, like just do your research, make sure you're asking the right questions. Because again, there's some people who are, maybe they're not super known producers, but they may have money and they may be able to get this movie made. And they're like this, but again, you need to just make sure you do your research. And that's the same thing with reps, because there's some people out there who are hella sketchy. Again, it's not a lot of people, but again, know your research if you are reaching out to anyone.
And I know early on for people, they're just so excited that a manager or an agent or a producer of any level is showing them excitement, because when you're writing something, you feel very lonely. And when someone gives excitement, you're like, thank you. Yes, I knew it. But like, make sure that involvement is worthy of you putting some time in and them somehow getting involved in the project.
But someone asked earlier, actually, that's a good point. What are some, you don't have to necessarily answer this specifically, but just broadly, what are some red flags a new writer to the industry who doesn't know how things work should look out for when it comes to finding a manager, a rep, working with a producer? Like, what are some common things you've seen that like this should set off some alarms?
Yeah.
Ooh.
An agreement that's really read if someone's getting you to sign a legal agreement, go to a lawyer and have them look it over. Now you might be like, well, I don't know any entertainment attorneys. Well, then you're gonna have to find one. You're probably gonna have to pay some money to have them look it over. And that sucks, but
no, it's cost of doing business.
I'll put it like this. It may cost some money and may never result in anything. And maybe like, I didn't really need to do that because nothing came of that project. But that project became something big. You're going to be real glad you did have no one's ever been like, I didn't go to a lawyer and then everything worked out. I'm sure someone has, but what you hear a lot more often is, yeah, I didn't go to a lawyer and man, do I regret that,
Yeah.
And so any legal agreements, always have a lawyer look them over pretty seriously. And by the way, don't go to your dad's mortgage lawyer or the friend of the family who does property law, because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to entertainment law. And
I think with that though, so maybe asking them, hey, do you have any, if you're anyone that you went to school with that is studying entertainment law, you are allowed to do that. Because I think so. I've had friends, like I have a friend who is, she does like family law and everything like that. And she's had people come up and she's like, no, she's like, but however, I went to school with this person. Here's their contact. You can reach out to them. They said it's okay to do that and ask some questions. So make sure to do that. I think so. If somebody's rushing you to sign something, where they're like, hey, what about this deal? Did you do it? Like, this deal's going to disappear in 5 days if you don't take this thing. No. Obviously, the whole thing, if you have to pay money to them for anything. I even say, like, I remember there was an agreement for one of my friends that came in and she was like, is this normal? And I think so it was a 5-year option. And I was like, fuck, that's not. I was like, no. I was like 18
a year to sometimes 18 months is the
it's like 18 months
option.
at max. I was like, the fact that and it's like,
although you might want to check in, might be like 18 months and then another 18 months and then another 18. That's the thing that we noticed in this thing. The guy was like, it's only a year. And we're like, oh no, it's a year with a $1 extension, which essentially makes it 2 years.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I think so. If you have something like that, make sure you're reading it thoroughly. The rushing of it, the person, I think so in terms of a rep.
Check if they now see themselves as a co-writer, if they're coming on as a writer, just because they gave a couple of notes. Now they're putting themselves as a writer.
Yes. For producer. Yes. That's also come up before. And I'm like, no, you're a fucking producer. That's supposed to be your job. I don't know.
Generally getting things in writing in a legal agreement. And again, for people early on, they're like, that's going to cost me some money. Yeah, but it could also make you and save you a lot of money and heartache down the road.
Because make friends with an entertainment attorney. It's my best.
Yes, if it's not written down, we have to extrapolate it, and the benefit generally goes to the party with the least involved, because it's unclear what the situation was.
Yeah. And so
I'm rushing you. My kind of default thing is if you're feeling weird, it's probably weird.
That's actually really good. Yeah. Let's go back to what John said. And again, the first piece of advice John gave me, go with your gut. If you're like, this does not feel right, don't do it. And like, if somebody just reaches out to you saying, hey, I read your script, I read 10 pages, I want to do this thing. The next thing you should do, and I feel like I probably froze for a second, but the next thing you should do is say, hey, let's hop on a phone call. Let's talk, or let's do a Zoom. Or if you want, meet someone in person at a coffee shop. By doing that, you get a sense of who they are. You can ask certain questions like, how do you see this project? Where do you see it going? How much do you think for the budget? Even if you have no idea what you see for asking those questions, and if they're kind of just giving you like wazzy woozy stuff, you'll know that like your gut feeling will hopefully kick in for that. So that's definitely something. And then in terms
not all forward momentum is good momentum or seemingly forward momentum. Some people are just like, I don't know. And there's something else going on with it. So I might as well attach this director who they won the, Venice Beach Film Festival in 1986 or something, and it's like, and
oh, no.
it's just, we've just seen people be in situations like that where it's like you undervalued yourself. And, this, I think sometimes, especially for up and coming screenwriters, this is a business of heart, and they're just so emotionally invested in their screenplays, but it's also a profession. And you kind of have to be like, are these people responsible professionals? Because down the road, if they're not, when someone's like, there's nothing more heartbreaking than being like, someone's like, hey, I read your script, I absolutely love it, I think it might be great for Clint Eastwood. And they're like, that's cool, but the Venice Beach 1985 guy purchased it for $500. And they're like, oh, sorry, too bad,
Right.
And, so it's, that doesn't mean you should hold out for perfection, but you should do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. I like that. And to kind of pivot into another question here, Andrew Phillips was asking about specifically like emerging writers. Like, when is the time that they should be seeking a rep? When should they be reaching out to a manager and an agent? Like, if they haven't worked professionally or had something produced at this point in time, are they better off trying to make their own content or pursuing contests or fellowship or other ways of building a resume before seeking a rep?
Well, John, when do you feel like someone's ready to be rep?
Yeah.
When you've got one great script, if you're not a director, if you're a director, if you're purely a writer, when you've got one great script that you're like, this is the one, this is amazing. Not just your first script, you're like, this is the one. And I've polished it and I've given to as many people as I can. And I really feel like this is as good as it possibly is. Then I would go out. I don't think you don't have to win a contest. You don't have to win a fellowship. I really don't care if you went and made a proof of concept for your TV show or whatever. There are other managers out there who might want 2 scripts. I'm a 1 script man, but there are people out there who are like, well, what else have you written? And then you might want to have like a second script that you feel really good about it. If you want to be a writer director, then you need a great short film, ideally something in the same tone as your feature that you would like to direct. But if you are not I don't personally believe in you needing to go and make your material unless you want to be a writer director, because making a feature film or whatever is really expensive. I mean, even a good short film could cost you tens of thousands of dollars and months of your time. And just to make something, I mean, if you're doing it just for shits and giggles and you're aware of that, then that's fine. But, for me, it's like, if you're looking at it as a financial investment, I think it's a little trickier because it just costs so much money to do it properly, to do it actually properly. So that's kind of my thing, is when you've got that one key thing, and not just the first thing, but you can really honestly say, this is the best foot forward that I would want to operate with. And you have to be very honest with yourself, because it may be the one time that people read your script. And you don't want to be like Kaylee was talking about, like, here you go, it's the first draft, and I'll get you a second draft. Nobody's reading your second draft. You have to be, you have one shot, to be great, as Eminem says.
Yeah, for your first impression. I mean, for myself, I think what I like, especially nowadays with clients, I think so early on, I would like the one script. but I think so. I always love to at least have two. So you have that one script, you're like, great, let's take this out, let's roll with it. And even if the second one is a pilot or is maybe another feature that even still needs work, but like knowing that it's closer to the finish line, so we have that next thing ready, I think I prefer the most when it comes to for a writer. Again, I don't think you need to come in saying I have 7 scripts written, because one, we're gonna have to go through all of it. Not all of them are gonna be sellable. That's just the honest truth. Not all of them are gonna be sellable, and you have to make sure the ego is not there. If I don't talk about a script for a while, don't act like it doesn't exist, because it probably does it to me. That's not a focus for me. For a director, I will say the same thing. Short film that's in the same tone. Like, I don't like to get a horror one, and again, someone's like, I want to do a comedy, and you're like, well, this short film doesn't respond to that. It's like, then you're gonna have to go make a comedy short, so we get a sense of what your comedy's like as a director. And again, feature films, like I've signed clients who've done their first feature that's probably not even played at festivals. They're $100,000 or something like that. If you're able to make a really great character contained story and it's good, I'm all for it. But again, I think so the quality is there, even if it's like a 3-minute short versus a 30-minute short. I'd rather take a really, really great 3-minute short than an 30 minutes.
Yeah, 100%.
No, I don't. This is subjective, but I don't think anybody should be making 30-minute short films. That's my perspective. Because at that point, why not just
concepts for TV shows? Like, I am like,
no,
and also like, I don't think people, I don't think people need pitch decks. I don't think they need Bibles. I don't,
we slightly diverge from that, but that's okay.
Well,
that's a separate Zoom.
We're talking about the things that people need. I think you need a script. If it's a script, I don't need a poster. I just need the script. Yeah. That's what I need. And if when my wife takes out a TV show, she will probably put together a pitch deck for it. By the way, purely because she has to do it over Zoom and she wants people to be able to look at something while they're kind of hearing her talk about it. So that's the thing that people do. It's not really something that a writer who has no representation and no credits is really going to need to do. And for features, no. Now, look, if you're a writer director with your short film and your feature, and then a lookbook is what they call it, and that's to help us through that. But the reality is, if you got a great short and you got a great script, what I will do is probably either work on it with you yourself or put you together with some great producers. And then the producers will be like, okay, cool, let's work on the lookbook with you. The script is the most important thing. And I just feel like there's a lot of people talking lately about pitch decks and designing pitch decks and things like that. And if it's fun, cool. But like, people are always like, hey, like, here's my pilot script. I'm like, cool. They're like, do you want the pitch deck? And do you want the whole series overview? I'm like, not really. I just want to read your pilot first. And if I really like your pilot, maybe I'll check that out. But it's going to come really down for me down to the pilot. Because the reality is we're going to work, those other things are going to get worked on with a producer who is going to want to do that. So just because we're talking about the material that we're looking for me, it's like one great script, whether it's a pilot or a feature. But Halle is, I think, a little bit more representative of a larger industry where they want another piece of material. I do like to say I like to have one great script and then have a whole bunch of different ideas that what's next. So when we can sit down with Halle, she's like, great, I loved your pilot or I loved your feature rather. What's next? We're like, well, the next one that our writer is thinking of working on, I mean, the writer would say this, is this. It's a really cool this. And it fits with the thing they wrote. It's not, and they're like, again, like Halle keeps saying, if they wrote a horror script, they're not like, well, I want to do a Three Stooges kind of comedy. It's like, no, here's a really smart supernatural horror concept that feels like if you liked this, you'll like that. And so we'll sometimes say, hey, here's this, and then here's the next one in the chamber that's already being written or worked on. So that gives you an idea of where they're going as clients.
Here's a quick one. Halle, is anybody reading spec TV scripts? And should anybody be writing them for that matter? Outside of it being an exercise, which I think is good, by the way.
Like it's used to spec TV. I think so. Yeah, it's good exercise, and only for writer like TV programs. That's the only time they ever really ask for it. For me, I don't read it. It doesn't do anything for me.
It also requires it requires the people who've seen the TV show, which is a big if. And then secondly, it basically can go out of fashion incredibly fast because by the time the next season rolls around, they might have done some of the stuff in it. So, but I've never had anyone ask to read one. In fact, if anything, it creates legal issues sometimes.
For sure.
I've had that.
And look, there are
done.
always exceptional circumstances where a thing can happen, where someone on a TV show, like when I was in Castle, we weren't allowed to read Castle episodes at all, straight up.
Yeah.
But I've heard of other shows where they do read spec episodes. So it happens. But what we're trying to say is 99% of the time, it's not applicable.
Yeah.
Right. You're better off writing an original pilot that's in your voice and your own story, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
I want to go back to the query for a second because a few people asked pretty similar questions. A lot of people asked pretty similar questions, actually. When it comes to the query, what are some of the things that are going to stand out for both of you?
Well, Haley doesn't read queries.
I mean, sorry. Let's go. I forgot.
For me, just the log line. That's it. I mean, look, I have a whole thread on my thing, which you can. I have a whole Twitter thread about it that you can find pretty easily on my Twitter page. But it's just basically like, "Dear John, how's it going?" or whatever. I've written a supernatural thriller. It's called Eli. Eli is about a boy in a haunted house who thinks ghosts or whatever. And then we see this as being in the tone of a Guillermo del Toro movie or whatever the fuck, or not. I don't know. And then be like, would love for you to check it out. Best. And you don't attach any files. Don't attach any files. If you attach a file, I'm deleting it automatically. And then that's it. And then don't follow up, be like, hey, it's been 3 days and you haven't responded.
Right.
The non-response is a response.
John, how do you feel if people with their bios in it as well? Because obviously I don't accept them, but I still see them. They still come in, and it's
I do like a quick, like, I'm a former Navy SEALs, blah 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 blah. Now it's interesting, but if the log line isn't good, it doesn't matter to me what your bio is. But if you're like, here's this legal thriller, I'm a former district attorney, okay, that takes. If it's a 7.5 log line and used to be a district attorney, that elevates it to me to like an 8 or an 8.5 because you are speaking hopefully from some kind of authority. I
was going to say the bio definitely can help if that person has a personal connection to the subject matter. Yeah.
Or they're just or it's like an interesting thing. But like the bio only acts as a bonus on top of the log line. It doesn't take a boring log line and make it interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
when I call up Haley and I'm like, hey, there's this great new script. It's boring, but boring. But the person who wrote it used to be a Secret Service agent or some shit. She's not gonna be like, well, that sounds incredibly boring, but I do like Secret Service agents,
Right.
You never know. No, kidding. No.
I like that.
Ruth, did you have another? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually had, this is kind of a general question and I wanted to address it to Haley on this, but Haley, whenever you get a fresh, brand new client, what do you expect from them in that first year?
I mean, I think so. It depends on the strategy that we have set forth. And I think so it depends on like what materials have been brought to me as well. But typically for the first year, I think what I really look and hope we achieve is you've been able to develop a handful of really, really great relationships around town. And again, it doesn't have to be with every single person around town, but like you've met a slew of producers, you've met a couple buyers, you've been able to talk about other projects you have, because obviously I think so they're the best people to pitch some of these projects you may be working on and seeing what people are responding to versus not as well. And I think, so by the end of that first year, I always hope that, and again, each client is different. And more in terms of just talking about a writer specifically, it's like, okay, by the end of the first year, hopefully, you've had a handful of good relationships that you've built. Hopefully by that point, you're working on a new project, whether it's a pilot, whether it's a new feature. So we have something new to be able to take out to these folks to continue for you to maintain your relationships. And obviously best case scenario is you're already working on a couple assignments, whether it's you have something in development that you're working on with a producer, you have a paid assignment, maybe even if it's a small, if you are a brand new writer, you have like a tiny, like small rewrite thing or something like that here. I think so that's really beneficial. And that's what I always hope for my clients by the end of that first year. But obviously everyone and every writing is different. I think so. I've learned so much during this time. I'm like, this is going to work so well. And then like by that year comes, I'm like, it hasn't. So I was like, okay, we'll keep pushing. Let's try the next year because I still believe in this person. And after a while, and I think so those are things I always think about is, okay, now we're at this many years. There hasn't been any movement on X, Y, and Z. Is that, and sometimes I'll think about it, like, is that me? Is it you? Is it just the way we work together? Maybe there's someone else who can crack this relationship and in your career more than I can. Because maybe I was like, okay, I've tried my plans multiple times and I have not been able to figure it out. So maybe I'm not the right person. And like that, sometimes those are really hard decisions to even make. And that's obviously pivots just a little bit, but because when you sign someone, you're excited about them. You want to see their career. You want to be there for the long term. So when it comes to a realization where it may not work out, you kind of feel like you're a failure. You're like, I really wanted this. And you're like, did I fuck this up? It's like, what went wrong? And sometimes it's like, hey, maybe I'm just not the right person. But in terms of signing a new client, hopefully the first year is just like they've built a lot of great relationships because again, this is a social industry. It's a social job. You have to just maintain those. And those are how people get jobs. It's like people want to work with their friends. It's as simple as that. They want to work with people that they like.
I want to highlight too that you're talking about years. You're not talking about like weeks or months. Like this is a long-term thing, and writers just have to be patient, and the reps hopefully have to be relatively patient if they really do believe in that writer and their work, and the writer believes in themselves and that work. It's a marathon, to use the cliche, right? Someone else asked earlier, how long, well, I already know the answer to this question. They asked, how long does it take typically to finally get some traction? It's like, well, it varies wildly, right? It could happen a month from after the signing. It could happen a year after the signing. So
yeah. And I think it
there's no
average.
average.
The project. Yeah. There's no magical number. I fucking wish there was.
Right.
Make our job so much easier, but there's not.
Yeah. Someone else did ask the question. It's kind of related to that. Do you think it's wise, or I guess it's really up to the writer, if they keep their full-time job while they're reps, while they're writing still, that's probably a good decision. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
100%. People make terrible decisions out of desperation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, people writing to the market more often than not is out of desperation. And if you can write, if you have a day job, and we love it when people keep their day jobs, before they launch their careers, because I've seen really bad situations where clients have, I don't know, I've quit my day job, like immediately because they got a manager or something.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, now you're like, hey, we gotta sell something. What's going on here? And I'm like, it's a long game. And when you start, and sometimes when you're really desperate for money, you take out scripts early before they're ready, or you go for opportunities that you're not the right person for. And, it's one of those things where, I have some clients who are quite well established, but, all it takes is one or two bad assignments of them doing badly for like, oh yeah, Sony's not hiring that writer anymore because that last project was pretty bad, And if you aren't that excited about a project, it's hard to make it pretty good, no matter how hard you work on it. Now
you're writing out of desperation, and that's just going to hamper the creative process.
So I think that's my thought. Haley, what do you think?
Oh, please don't quit your day job. It's like obviously there's certain ones where if that takes up so much of your time, finding a part-time job and being able to write on the side, because it is an investment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, again, some people will hit it so much faster, and some it'll still take a year. It'll take this. So my biggest fear is when people start feeling like they're running out, when they're desperate for money, it puts people in a panic. And like, yes, it's always putting you in a panic, but it puts even more panic in us because we're like, we want to help. How do we help? And like, you're trying to get them a job and you're coming off desperate to reps to be like, to other executives to be like, just hire them for this thing. Do you have a quick polish? Do you have something just to give them money in their pocket? And then you're always going to be asking for that, thinking it works. So I think if
you've you've lost your leverage, right? In a negotiation, like, cause you're just like, please, and Haley, you'll know this real well. Let's say we sell a script in January. The writer may not get paid until like June or something, because it'll take 3 months for the major deal points to be ironed out. And then you'll start working on the project. And then eventually it'll take another 2 or 3 months for the long form paperwork to be done. In fact, the long form paperwork may not be done by June. And you have to do what's called a C of E, which is, Certificate of Execution or something?
Oh yeah, they do execution or C of A.
Something like that. Anyways, point is you sign it basically saying, hey, like we're all good. We'll figure out the minor points. And then we can get you paid the commencement money, And that's for something that's sold in January. So it could take you 4 to 5 to 6 months to get your first paycheck for the thing. Yeah. So
even take a year,
if you're like, if it's January and you're like, I desperately need money, it's like, okay, this is, crap. This even if we sold something right now, it can take a while for that to kick in.
Yeah. Oh,
Or
especially
driving
right now.
Uber.
BA is
Right.
very slow right now. They're overwhelmed. I literally
Always
just
slow,
finished
now it's
closing a deal.
glacial.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's very it's extremely slow. But I had a client who we closed the deal points, the main ones last year, and we finally closed like the long form, and they could not start until the long form was done. And that's something that took
Oof.
months. And everybody,
Oof.
producer, person of this, everyone had to have their deals closed in order for anything to move forward. And so that took so long. And the client was like, well, I'm gonna do, I was like, don't spend any money. It's like, you have to conserve your money. Be smart about this. And I think so there's a lot of clients that you learn about this too. It's like, you have to be
Mhm.
smart with your money. You have to be smart. Make sure you have
It's a
the
freelance
bare
gig.
minimum.
It's a freelance gig.
Yeah.
You're a
There's
freelance-
a
you're a
stigma though, I
freelance
think,
writer.
with some writers, because like their friends and their family have been like, oh, when are you going to become a TV writer? When are you going to become a screenwriter? And it's like, you want to get rid of the part-time job or the day gig because you think that you're failing if you don't, and you're not,
Exactly.
keep
You're
it.
not. Yeah. Because you are working as a writer, and you should
My
continue
wife
to say that you
didn't quit her job until she was number 1 on the blacklist in 2016. She didn't quit. She actually quit it like 4 months later, but that was really fast. That's because she'd already landed 2 assignments. She'd sold Blonde and she'd landed another assignment. And even then, it was that was a pretty quick turnaround. And that was just because we happened to be getting married that month,
Right.
And so, and the project we had taken originally out in September, right? So this project was taken out in September. We number 1 on the blacklist in December. I think the sales started happening in December and January or something. And then even then she kept working her assistant job, by the way. She was working as an assistant on Fresh Off the Boat to a writer named Courtney Kang. And so it was funny. It's like, she's just this little assistant, she's 26, and they're like, you're number 1 on the blacklist, and everyone's like, yay. They're like, okay, so now, let's go get some coffee,
Right.
So, and like and that was also something where the script actually sold, and she actually got an assignment pretty quickly from it, and there are a lot of people who, they might have, sold a script, but if you sell a script, even if it's a WGA minimum, you're looking at like, what is that, like 100 grand, 150? I forget what
Depending
on
the budget level too, and depending on which.
Yeah, it depends on the budget level, but it's let's say it's like 80 grand or something like that, or 100 grand, which you're like, holy crap, that's a lot of money. But it's going to take 6 months to come. And then it's going to be like, let's say it's 100 grand. Then it's like 50 grand for commencement, and then 50 grand for delivery. And then of that 50 grand, where it gets real fun. So 50 grand, and then you're taxed on that 50 grand. Okay. So let's say like you lose 20 grand of taxes. And then let's say you have a lawyer, an agent, and a manager. Well, you take out 25% of that, which is 12.5. So 50 goes down to 30, goes down to 12.5, so that's like, what is that? What's 30? Like 18 grand?
About 18.5.
Yeah, 18. I'm married to a writer, so I hear it all day long. So it's like, of that, you didn't even make 20 grand of that original. So 100. There's
a hard truth for you guys.
Yeah, maybe it's not even 20. Maybe 20 is a little above where the taxes would be. I forget. But yeah, 100 grand, you're going to, if you sell something, if you get paid 100 grand, you'll be lucky to walk away with 50 grand of that. Sure.
By the end of it.
Post taxes, post commissions.
Yeah.
And that's why
so keep that day job.
Hard.
Keep the job.
Keep it. Obviously, if you're able to shift it to do more part-time or something like that, so you're able to keep writing, I think that's great. But yeah, it's tough living.
Mm-hmm.
It's not glamorous until you make $1 million.
There you go.
Even then, look how much you can take up, but then the rest of it it's still a lot. So
if you think about it, it's too depressing. Just don't calculate.
Yeah, don't think about that part.
Right, but that is the first step. That's the first snowball to go, pick up speed. So you got to start somewhere. We got a question from Sean Collins Smith, who was on a previous town hall. It's a very wry question. I'm not going to ask it, but the purpose behind the question. Quit messing around, Sean. The purpose behind the question
Sean should quit his job and move to a coastal Maine town because he hasn't seen heat yet. I'm just saying it. I'm saying it. Leave the industry.
He hasn't seen Goodfellas.
What would they say on that fancy NBC show if they found out you hadn't seen Heat?
Wait, John, can you see the question that he asked?
I can, yes.
Oh, I'm like, wow, why did you guess that he would have said a coastal Maine town? Anyway, but I do like this question for a couple of reasons. I talked to, not a lot, but I talked to a lot of writers, but the small fraction of those writers who want to be TV writers, I asked them, like, do you watch a lot of TV? And they're like, not really. And I'm like, well, please tell them as industry people, because they won't listen to me. As industry people, if you want to be a TV writer, you have to watch a lot of TV and you have to be familiar with the landscape.
Yeah,
correct?
It's research. It's research.
At least the genre, you're right.
This is a setup. This is like a rhetorical question that Matt has set up for us.
It is a rhetorical question because the answer is yes, of course. And I want them to hear it from
the best. Look, how people always ask, how do I become a better writer? Become a better writer by writing more, by reading more, and by watching more.
Watching more. Correct.
The end.
Yep.
Exactly.
Sean Colin Smith hasn't seen Goodfellas because he's not writing crime drama, so I guess that's okay. What I was going to say before with him, he's actually a great example. He talked about it on the previous town hall. He kept his job once he got signed with 3 Arts. He kept his job until something happened, and then something happened, and that's kind of the progression you have to sort of go in, even though you might not want it, or it might not be that ideal. So
yeah.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left. Ruth, was there any questions I missed that were?
I did. So there's a lot of questions kind of filtered in here about adaptation, like adapting your work, essentially, like a pre-existing IP, pre-existing novel, short story, that kind of thing. I mean, writers are writers. They often will write in different mediums. And so I've seen several questions of writers asking about that. Like, how do you guys feel about clients who write across multiple mediums? I mean, do you encourage writers to come in trying to adapt their own work or their novel, or does it just depend on the IP that existed prior, what kind of run it had, if it's worthy of an adaptation? What are your thoughts surrounding an adaptation, since it does seem to be have a popular corner, I guess, in the Hollywood circles of if it is a pre-existing IP, it can carry some weight to it.
Well, it's only pre-existing IP if it means Infinite was based on pre-existing IP. Okay. But, and this is no disrespect to Eric Minecraft who wrote the book, but that book was self-published, and they didn't make $150 million movie because it was an incredibly well-known book. It was it was a great book with a great concept that had been, if you read it, you really enjoyed it and you liked it, but it was not a bestseller or anything like that. So, if you wrote Where the Crawdads Sang, or you wrote, another best-selling book, well, that's something where people, Hollywood loves pre-approval. That's why they like The Blacklist. That's why they love Oscars. That's why they love, you wish to write a hit movie. They're like, well, this person has been previously approved, or a remake. This concept has been previously approved. So it was a best-selling book. Well, that must mean it must make for a great movie because a bunch of people out there like it, And so but if your book has just been published and self-published, or it didn't even get much of a reaction. I mean, look, then it comes down more to concept, but that's kind of my thinking. Haley, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Writing a short stories, I think is fine. Because again, the idea of John mentioned just you continue to keep writing and keep honing in your craft. Because I think so there are ways, sometimes maybe you write an amazing short story that you're, and again, it might not be something that John and I are okay, we're going to go take the short story out. Sometimes, yes. I think so. Sometimes if it's that amazing, we can. I think so with the book, sometimes it can be tough. I think so. It's one, if you're hey, I wrote this book, you're great. And it's self-published. It's a part of me is just okay, well, hold on to it, but let's continue to build your credits. So then when that time comes, when you introduce it, it's by the way, I self-published this book. And at that point you had 1 or 2 or 3 or something credits under your belt. I think the people will then pay attention to it versus initially they're just okay, you're just a person trying to do it all, and they don't even know if you're good yet. So I think
if it's a great concept for the book, if the concept of the book makes for a great movie, then great. But the fact that it was previously a book has no bearing.
Yeah. So
same thing with stage plays, short stories, collections, all those mediums.
It doesn't matter if something used to be something unless in that previous iteration it had some meaning.
Yeah. Right.
It's like a photograph of a painting. If the painting is unknown, what does that mean? But if it's a photograph of the Mona Lisa, that's more interesting, And so that's kind of what adapting a work. If in the previous format there was no acclaim or or financial relevance to it, it's a moot point. It's all about the concept. It might as well be an original concept as far as anyone's concerned. But I mean, look, sometimes what you can do is you can take, you might as well just adapt it on spec and then that be that, I think if you've written a short story and we take it out and we try to sell it, if you've never written a screenplay before, or you're kind of an unknown person, you're like, I'm adapting this short story. It's like, well, then you could just write that on spec. You don't need someone to pay you to do that. But if you're a well-known writer, if you are, I don't know, like Scott Frank or like Simon Kinberg, and you're like, here's my short story, and also I want to adapt it, then that's a lot more interesting because heck, you're already someone well-known, you know?
Yeah.
So
you have to build that credit.
The idea that hacking your way in by writing a novel, I saw some people talk about that sometimes, and I don't even remotely understand that. It's unless the thing is already a big deal, it doesn't matter. And becoming a big deal as a novelist is already, or a playwright or a short story writer, that's hard. That's just as hard as being a screenwriter, probably maybe even harder. I don't know. I don't know those worlds super well. So it's like, you're like, man, trying to climb this massive mountain is hard. Maybe it's a hack to go climb that other mountain that's just as big. I don't really understand the math there.
Mm-hmm. The writers we've had that have done that. I wouldn't necessarily call it hacking in the back door of the industry, although that's kind of like a side goal. They did it because they hit so many dead ends with their script, and they really still love the story, and they thought, hey, maybe it'll work for publishing, and they went and wrote it as a book, and then they got a lit agent and got it published.
I mean, like 30 Days a Night was originally a screenplay, and then he wrote it as a graphic novel. It became a hit graphic novel, and then they readapted it into a screenplay. So it happens, but that's just because 30 Days a Night, the graphic novel, became a hit. You know, it's kind of like if the novel becomes a hit, great. You know, although at that point it might be hard you might have some leverage to try and write the books, but like J.K. Rowling, I guess she was probably busy writing the rest of the Harry Potter books, but she wasn't writing the Harry Potter movies. That was Steve Kloves for the most part. Right. But now she is writing them, I guess, you know, or like E.L. James didn't write the first 50 Shades of Grey movie, or, you know, anyways.
Before we close shop here for the evening, that was a quick 2 hours. I told you, quick for me anyway. What's kind of like an overall like tip that you could throw out? Not even like your top tip, but just a good solid tip to any writer who is just starting out and trying to see what they should start writing first.
I would say write what you know. I think so. I always find it weird when somebody, again, there are different aspects to it, but like write something you're excited about. I find it weird when somebody writes a story about some specific culture that they have no idea what they're about or anything like that. They're like, I'm going to write about this thing. I'm like, but you're not even from that culture. You don't understand that culture. It doesn't make sense for you to write about that. I think so. If it's a connection to a book that you read, or again, a short story or something where you were trying to do an adaptation, it's different. But I think write what you know. I think another piece of advice I would say is just like stay humble as a writer. I think so. Again, you get to create art. You get to hopefully create things that will see the day of light on screen, both small and big, but don't think you're better than people. I think so. I hate when after a while the egos start coming in and people are like, well, why are they hiring me? I'm this person. I'm like, okay, calm down. You're still a writer. Like, know where you're at. You're lucky to be in this spot. There's thousands of people who want to be in this position. Stay humble about it. And then my third piece of advice, be patient with scripts sometimes when reading. I saw a couple names on here that I've read their scripts and I've still yet to respond. And I'm sorry. And I just remembered, I just saw your name pop up. And I swear to God, I will. And just say, be consistently checking in. And again, sometimes we're just overwhelmed. So our thoughts to be able to talk about a new script and give notes when we've just done it for 5 other scripts for our clients, sometimes it's hard to just switch those off. So just be patient with some people, especially if you want to see it. The more, if you ping 2 people too quickly and they're like, hey, I usually say, give me a beat. That can mean 1 month. That can mean 2 months.
Right.
Which unfortunately it sucks, but please be patient.
Yeah.
Like that.
Read in 2 weeks, Haley. I don't know what your problem is.
He does read very fast.
I'm kidding. Actually, I've been much slower lately. I don't know what it is, the pandemic or like too much stuff going on, but
yeah, it's just like the burnout's coming in. So it's tough.
It does feel a little bit like that. My piece of advice would be, I guess weirdly, I'm going to rehash what I kind of said previously, which is read a lot, write. I mean, there's nothing more like shocking to me. Like, I guess it's funny. I'll be like, hey, like write. People ask me like, what should I write? And I go, or what's selling in the marketplace. I'm like, well, you can tell pretty easily. Just go and look what's getting made, you know? And then they say, well, I don't really like current modern day movies, so I don't watch any modern day movies.
Oh,
It happens,
hate
right?
that.
It's crazy.
Hate
That's what I was saying before.
But they
I get
think
that
it's
too.
kind of like when it's kind of like that Onion article, like where the guy's like, man who doesn't own TV tells everyone he meets. And it's like people, they're really proud that they don't like modern movies. And it's like, why? Like, that's crazy. You know, you are making movies in a modern marketplace, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, maybe if you're a freaking genius, you can work that out. But the reality is, you should be watching a ton. You should be reading a ton, and you should be writing a ton. And I think the hardest thing to do is to be really hard on yourself. I mean, and I'm sure some people are like, I'm hard on myself all the time, but I guess harden your concepts is what I mean. And I think that's one of the things that as a manager I do, and I'm sure some clients are like, you're too that way, but I'm trying to do it I'd rather have a client send me a bunch of ideas and be like, I don't think any of these ideas are right I don't think these are that interesting, honestly, you know? And I read a lot more than they do. Because like, I think to write a good script takes at least 6 months. Often it can take 9 months to a year to write a good feature script. And I'd rather kill it in the crib, if you will, and be like, I'm hard for me to imagine calling Haley 9 months from now and being like, hey, do you want to read the script? You'd be like, no, I've read 5 of those. No more road trip movies.
No more road trip movies, actually. Please don't.
No more road trip.
Okay.
That's my bet noir. But I really think people are so eager to start writing that they don't spend enough time on what I would call the conceptualizing stage, which is like thinking, like, is this the right thing I should be writing? It's kind of like going on a road trip and you're like, where are you driving? You're like, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out. You know, it's like, no, you want to have a clear path. I mean, look, I'm a big advocate of outlining. I'm also a big advocate of literally writing a log line or a version of a log line early on to figure out what your thing is. And, you know, some people are like, I just follow my journey. And that's cool. Like, if that works for you, I personally, as a manager, have found more, not for every single client, but for most clients, it's better to operate that way, and really be really, really rigorous and hard on your ideas. Because here's what happens. This is a true thing. I email or I call an agent, or maybe once they've got an agent, or if we couldn't get an agent on board, then I email or call an executive and say, hey, here's the thing. It's a log line. It's about a woman who goes back in time to try and, like, you know, fall in love with her husband again or something. I don't know. Right. And they'll say like, I read 5 of those. No, not for me, you know, and that's it. That's as fast as it goes. Or if somehow they read it just because I asked them to, then because people are like, well, whatever, they're going to read anyways. What does a log line matter? Okay. So they read it. Like, maybe I was able to, like, kind of like, bully them into reading it, because I'm like, you're missing out. So they read it and they go, this is great. And they go to the head of their company and they go, hey, boss, I just read a great script. Well, what's it about? Well, that's what this girl, and she goes back in time to, like, fall in love with her husband all over again. And they're like, sounds boring. I don't want to read it. People don't want to read. And so you have to, like, trick them into reading things. You have to make them feel like, hey, this is going to be great, you know? And because they're thinking, then the person coming is thinking, well, I got to go and convince a studio to buy that, a VP to buy that. And then the VP is going to go to the president, right? And at no point does anyone at any level ever want to read anything. They don't want to read things. They want to read. They've already got 12 things to read. They don't want a 13th thing to read. They do not want to do that. They want to find an excuse not to read. And then they're thinking, even if I buy this, can I find a director who's going to want to do this? Can I find a movie star who's going to want to do this? Sorry, Haley, do you want to jump in?
I was going to say, it reminded me of, I literally now can't remember. There was a moment I was like, oh, that's what it reminds me of. Something my dad always told me, especially when I decided I was becoming an agent, because he's like, oh, you're going to do sales. I was like, I don't fucking sell. Like, I'm not a seller. And it's like, every person in this industry is a seller. You as a writer, you have sold yourself to us. We sell you to this person sells you to this. Like, everyone is always trying to sell something. So learn as much as you can. And then I also saw a comment about somebody who said, can you do like your part-time or side hustle job outside the business? Of course, as long as you create time for you to write.
People don't care if you work in the business or you don't work in the business.
Yeah,
it can be helpful to work in the business because you can make relationships. So that can be helpful. Yeah. Absolutely. But to go back to kind of like the whole kind of like really being rigorous on yourself is like, be rigorous on the concept. So a lot of people write, like the most common thing, I haven't gotten it in a minute, thank God. Maybe it's because I put it out there in the world, but I was funny. I saw the former head of the NBC Writers Lab or the Fox, or she's now on Twitter, I think, as a script consultant, but she said this was the number one thing she saw the most. Maybe it's the ABC Writers Program. And she said it is a former writer or somehow artist who lives in either Los Angeles or New York, and they move back home because it didn't work out or somewhere or a family member died. They go back home and they get involved in the wacky business, whether it's a restaurant or like whatever, a farm or whatever. They get involved in the wacky business, and then they discover themselves again, and they're stopped being a big shot person. I have seen that concept so often. And so, that's just something that like, it's very familiar. And so really have to ask yourself, like, if I'm going to write this and put 6 months, 9 months, a year into this, and then down the road, try to get people to read it, is this really good enough? And I know people hate Save the Cat. But one of the things I talk about in Save the Cat is pitch your concept to as many people as possible and see how they react to it. And like, to go back to Infinite, I was at lunch at Vivian, which Haley knows is my favorite restaurant. I love Vivian.
I went there
They always bring me on my Arnold Palmer before I even walk to the table. And so I'm at Vivian and I'm sitting down with Rafi Crone, and Rafi's like, yeah, so like there's this book I want to bring to Ian Shore because I think he'd be great to adapt it. And he's like, it's called The Reincarnationist Papers. And he talked about it. And he's like, it's basically about people. What I gathered from it was it's about people who can reincarnate. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm familiar with that concept. And I was also like, they never made a movie really about reincarnation other than Dead Again, to my knowledge. And then they were like, and they remember all their skill sets from the past life. So if you were a master archer in your previous lifetime, you'll be I'm like, well, shit, I never seen that before. It's kind of like in the Matrix where he's like, I know Kung Fu, but you knew Kung Fu because you were a Kung Fu master in a previous lifetime. I'm like, that's an interesting spin on reincarnation, which is a concept that you don't have to explain to people. Everyone knows what reincarnation is. And so I was like, oh shit, that's cool. And once we had that one idea of like, people that could reincarnate and keep their skill sets, like that alone, I was like, oh, that's a concept I've never quite seen before, but it's really easy to explain. And look, it took Ian a number of years to write a great script, but then we sold it in like almost immediately. We sold it to the first studio we sent it to. We got the first director we went to, and they pushed it into production. And like, because it was so easy to understand, the concept was so clear and clean. And in a weird way, it's because it had, it was similar in certain respects to The Matrix. It was similar in certain respects to other things that were out there, but just different enough, And so it was one of those things that like, every time you mentioned to people, they immediately understood it. They immediately got it. And they're like, oh, I get that. And like, I'm not saying everything has to be as high concept or as sticky as that, but you want to really, I think of it as stress testing. You want to stress test an idea before you devote yourself to 6 to 9 months of things. I always say it's better to have a great concept that is decently written than to have an amazingly beautifully written script of a pretty boring concept or a commonplace 100%. Or a dull concept. It's kind of like buying real estate. It's better to have an okay house in a really great neighborhood than to have a gorgeous house in the middle of nowhere. Because if it's in a great neighborhood, people are just going to want to move in. They're like, we can fix this up. Which is the same thing as a screenplay. We can just hire another writer to kind of polish this up a little bit because the bones are really good. And so that's the thing I really tell people, and that doesn't just have to mean, by the way, a high concept thing. When I think about, Cauliflower, which the script pipeline, won the competition, and Matt was kind enough to introduce me to the writer who became a client. It's a really weird script, but it was so unique and so different and drawn from the writer's world. And it was just so weird. It's just so unique and different. Or my client, Tyler Tice, wrote this original script, Day Shift, which just came out on Netflix this weekend. And he was working as a pool cleaner. And he kind of had this idea of like writing about vampires, but doing it from a really blue collar, almost midnight run kind of vibe. And that was kind of his initial way into it. And it was like, yes, you've seen vampire movies before, you've seen Blade, but you've never seen Blade having to deal with a union, and having to do like stuff like that. And so it felt like John Wicky, like a world below a world. And so it connected to a lot of things, but it was on its own. And that's why, immediately he wrote it. It won the Slam Dance competition, started acquiring producers and moving towards, production. And when you have something that is really unique, whether it's a big high concept movie like Day Shift or Infant, or something really unique like Cauliflower, people will respond to it. When it's something more generic, like, yeah, it's about a guy and he returns home after his dad dies. Like, look, you could do the most amazing job on it. And maybe that is the exceptional thing that's the exception that proves the rule. That is so, but the bar is so high, on that.
Somebody mentioned The Bear too, which is a good example of how they made it work. That's sort of like, quitting your
done
job
so
and going
well,
back
and like that's a familiar concept, but it's done so incredibly well. Also, he moves back home, but he moves to Chicago, so it's not quite the.
it's a very
already a
niche
chef.
job.
He's already a chef.
Right.
So like it's a little. This is more like they get into the flower business, and they always used to be an actor or a writer or a director because it's written by someone who is in Los Angeles and is either thinking about moving home or is going to move home.
Right.
But my sense, if I could boil down my ramble into one thing, it's you need to read, you need to write, and you need to watch, and then you need to be really, really, really hard on your ideas before you even start writing them. Because the moment they get into the market, no matter how hard you are, the marketplace is even harder. The marketplace wants to say no. People don't get fired for saying no. They never do. The guy who passed on Star Wars, he didn't get fired. Eventually he got fired for saying yes to something else, right? You get fired for saying yes. So nobody wants to say yes. So that you're already walking into that mindset. And so you really have to get people to like, you got to get them to be excited. And I think, as hard as you are on your ideas, this marketplace will be even harder. So if there's even any sort of weakness, any sort of familiarity, they'll sniff it out real quickly. So anyways, that's my ramble about
develop your ideas first is the most important thing.
Haley said 3 things in like 5 minutes. I took 10 minutes to say one thing.
No, it's just so honest and it's true. But also think about it. We're like Vegas. It's a gamble. It's a gamble to make a 40 million, even $1 million is a lot of money to make a movie. So that's why people are going to be saying a lot.
Even the cheapest movie. Like I think the lowest you can make a movie for is probably like a little bit under 100 grand or something. And when you get into post-production and all that kind of stuff, it usually ends up costing more. That's an amazing, huge chunk of money, but really movies tend to get made more in the $1 million to $3 million range, or 3 to 5 even, and that is more money than sometimes some people make in their entire life, and that's what you're asking someone to invest in. And there has to be, people have to look and be like, yeah, I can recoup this, and so you have to be just as diligent and hard on that idea in order to get people to feel like they're going to step up and give you that money for that concept.
Can I just say, I could go on for hours and hours. We haven't lost that many participants. Usually towards the end or even at the halfway point, we'll lose maybe 30% of the participants, and number has barely left. So I think everyone has benefited greatly from this conversation.
We have a wrapped audience there.
Very wrapped, super wrapped.
Super wrapped.
Yes. It's a title for a movie there somewhere. Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Haley. This has been wonderful.
Yes,
everyone who attended, thank you. The recording will be available by next week. If you have any questions for us, please email info@pipelineartists.com. Jeannie checks that. Ruth checks that. Give us a shout on Twitter. A shout? Is that still the popular, fun, hip term? I'm not writing for teen shows. Give us a tweet on Twitter if you have any questions too. We check that all the time. It is my home away from home. And we'll see you perhaps late September. We're going to have another town hall, ironically, on ideas and the importance of developing concepts before you start writing. So
you stole my idea.
Stole your idea on doing ideas, buddy.
Just like Haley said, it happens.
The inception of stealing ideas.
The moment it happens.
This is it, Haley.
It does. I would like to mention as well that we do have another symposium presentation next week on Wednesday, August 24th by Miss Kara Richardson. It is going to be on self-publishing for all those novelists and authors out there, the fundamentals and beyond. So it's going to be everything you need to know about self-publishing. And we would love for anybody in this group to jump into that mix as well. So that is next week on Wednesday.
All righty. Thank you, everyone.
I think that's everything. Thank you again.
All right, see you next time.
Symposium is brought to you by Pipeline Artists, a division of Pipeline Media Group. To learn more about upcoming live symposiums, Visit symposium.pipelineartists.com and follow us on Twitter @pipelineartists.